Good morning, folks. We're back. And I don't know why my voice is doing this, but it is. I just shot a short video. That's why we're a little late. Didn't edit it yet. So I may bring up something that I shot in the video and steal my own thunder. But I was traveling yesterday and I went through a really cool store. And I picked up some stuff and I did a video on it. Nothing huge, but it is something I like to share with you guys. And we'll edit that video later. Alright. I went ahead and cleared, well, the visible part is cleared of the work area. And we'll go ahead and bring things back as we go. And finish that. So, yeah, I guess at some point I need to finish these vehicles. Meaning the basing and stuff on there, on these other ones. I guess I should do that before I dig into the other ones. Alright, let's bring these guys up. And some of these don't need much to do other than putting grass on them and tufts. Like this one just needs grass and tufts. This one just needs grass and tufts. This one has some of the goop that I had to add to it because I did a really shoddy job of, well, I was falling asleep, honestly, when I was doing it the other day. No big deal. That one we need to paint a little bit on the edge. So these require some painting. And this one's good to go. All right, so let's get these 5 vehicles completely complete. And then we'll go back and start working on the next batch of 3. And before we do any of that, let's make it cooler in here. Or get some more air circulation. What's the temperature this morning? 72. Summer's here. Completely dark and 72. Yuck. Yeah, my voice is suffering a little bit. I went to a theme park yesterday with the daughter. And although I didn't think I did a whole lot of hollering, it was pretty loud. Okay. Chocolate brown. Yeah, chocolate brown. Let's go ahead and add this first. I'm not going to use a wet palette or anything for this. This one right here. This one should be just fine. Well, that drone, unfortunately, is the fan overhead, so hopefully it's not too annoying, but I was hot. Actually, 72 degrees is the same temperature outside that it should be here, inside. I can't really drop it to less than 72 or it becomes unaffordable. And you can freeze the unit out there. And then you got different issues. So I would love the house to be like at 65 or something like that, but that just isn't happening. However, in the winter months, we won't turn the heater on. So sometimes it will be 65 in the house. Except it's free when you do it that way. Because it's in the 30s outside. But those days are over. I'm pretty sure we don't have any more cold snaps. This last one we got actually was pretty late because we got it on the 21st. So the first day of spring we actually got a cold snap. meaning it was high 30s. But that video I shot this morning, I thought I was going to do last night, but I didn't get in until after 11 o'clock. And I realized how, I know I don't like night driving anyways, but I realized how at night there's just some folks that misbehave when they drive at the wrong time. Okay? I'm not saying, I don't drive aggressive sometimes, but I don't drive aggressive when I can't see as well. Just like, if I'm going to drive like a maniac, which I'm not going to, I wouldn't do it when I'm on a motorcycle where I have no protection. And people do that. So yesterday at night, I'm like, speed limit 70 miles an hour. Nobody runs 70. I was stuck behind some guy going about 73, 74. And I'm fine, not stuck behind him. I was fine because he was, at night you can't see if there's a tire or something like that, a recap, road alligator, they call them here in Florida. Recap tires with all the things the government makes illegal. I can't believe those things aren't. But anyhow, there's stuff on the road. Figured, well, let him run into it, first. So I was just being fine, going 70, 73, 74 miles an hour, 75, whatever the guy was going. And these guys were zooming past me over 100. Just like they're playing fucking games, like they're playing Forza. That's the wrong time to be driving like a maniac at night. Regardless of speeding tickets, how about just for safety, There's some people out there who have a death wish. There's suicidal folks out there. And the problem is they'll take people with them that aren't suicidal, Anyhow, I do not like to drive at night, other than it being boring. But I didn't get back until much later. I had every intention of doing that video last night, but I was very, very tired. Just awake enough to take a shower before going to bed. And now here we are. But I got to go to a store that actually has a storefront that I'm a big fan of. I bought stuff from them online in the past and had a very good experience with it. So I figured I'd share that with you. And if you get a chance, you can go by there. Video should be out early afternoon today, I would imagine. It's filmed, not edited, and it doesn't do heavy editing. I'm lazy. I'm lazy when it comes to... It's not that I'm lazy. It's that I need to do this. And anything that I throw in front of myself that gets in the way of this ends up being a problem. So I don't like doing a video that requires 8 hours editing, because that's a lot of hours. That's 8 hours I could be painting. So I don't want to use a script. So sometimes I leave things out and I go, oh yeah, by the way, I meant to say this a little earlier. Hey, it's just me being natural, There's a lot of scripted stuff on YouTube. Figured make mine a little bit more real, but when your hobby ends up becoming a chore, you end up disliking it or just stop doing it altogether. So we don't want to do that. Besides the stuff you see on TV, people that do videos and stuff like that, they don't edit their own shit. You have an editor to do that. They don't make sure that all the cameras and stuff are in the right place. That's for the director or the producer. Sometimes when you have to play all the instruments yourself, they sound out of key. Off key, whatever. I shouldn't be doing musical quotes. I really don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm a painter and a war gamer, damn it. Okay. That's complete. And I really wish I could put this water cup somewhere. You know what I should do? I should order another one of these things, and I'll show you one of these. And this is actually a great thing that I got. I guess it's been about a month now. I went to IKEA and they didn't have one of these in stock, so I had to Amazon it, which is what happens with most of my purchases. You go somewhere and they don't have it. I'm like, well, I still want it, so I guess I'll get it from Amazon. It's a little drink cup holder. It's actually pretty solid. They make millions of different versions of these. I just wanted one that wasn't flimsy and robust. And it attaches to your paint table. So then you can put your drink and not have it just to the right hand of yourself and knock the thing down. You know? And it just clips on here and it's great. And I should get another one of these for my water cup. So I'm not trying to reach over the camera and bumping it. Let's reattach this thing on here. But there's lots of different versions of it. I should have gotten one of these a long time ago. But I didn't know I needed one until I walked into IKEA and I saw that on a table. I'm like, oh, that would be great. You know? And it just fits on there. But this water cup that's all the way back here, that I now need to rinse this, I could just have it right here. Just something to think about. Okay. Done with that color. I think we can add the middle color now. It'll be all right. This stuff dries pretty quick. Well, that's not it. Let me turn on my other light. It's this one, isn't it? Yep. US Field Drab. How's everybody doing this morning? What are we working on? I mean, I'm working on World War II stuff, but gonna mess with the airbrush later on today. Not for these vehicles, but for the next batch. But we gotta wait till the sun comes out. So that'll be a little later. This should be fine. We should be able to get in there and knock out what we need and get out before touching a bunch of other things and messing them up. Yeah. Oh, it's throwing me off being a different color. Sometimes it doesn't mix up real well. Maybe I didn't do a good job of mixing it. It's all right here though. Yeah, I make mistakes constantly, but maybe you can learn from them and not do the same stuff I do. But I got to fix all my stuff. Hey, you learn how to fix mistakes. So I don't have a blooper reel. It's all blooper. It's all one big happy accident. And which one had a little bit more? Did the Ag Panzer have a little bit more? I really wish I could just work on one vehicle at a time, but it's drying time. It's more efficient to be working on multiple vehicles at the same time. Just reminds me of stuff at work too much. Okay, she's completely done. Let's get her the hell out of here. This one needed a little bit down here. Yeah. I tried not to holler yesterday, but I guess I didn't succeed. When my daughter was little, we'd go to water parks that had slides, and I'd make it a point to be really loud when I was in them, and then I'd suffer with like a horse. I was hoarse for a couple of days afterwards. I'm like, let's not do that anymore, because that's just inconvenient. But sometimes you go on a roller coaster, it's so awesome, you just can't keep your thoughts to yourself. It's funny, talking about roller coasters. When I was a kid, if you didn't go on all the roller coasters, you were basically a sissy, and you'd be called out. And now as an adult, I know so many people that won't go on them. But yet they're always full. You know? I mean, I actually wish less people went on roller coasters, then they wouldn't be in line in front of me. But it seems like many of the people that I know, maybe I just know a bunch of pansies. But there's stuff that you do, there's stuff that you did as a kid that you wouldn't even think twice about not doing. You know? You want every ride, or you get called out on it. Now, if it makes you sick, you go on the ride and it makes you sick, yeah, you don't go on it again. But I'm just saying, like, not even want to try it. Okay? You can't control if you get motion sickness or something like that. At least try it. I really don't like the next step, which is adding the grass. It just makes such a freaking mess. And I have a pretty controlled mess that I do. But still. I could go and do it in a less messy area, you know, like in the garage or something like that. But then you can't film it. It's hot. Even worse than hot, the lighting. The lighting just isn't good. I don't have one of these, and I'm not going to buy one of these, put it in the garage. You know, I have a spare one, but stuff in the garage tends to get messed up easy. Dust and lighting is an issue. And plugs is an issue too, because I think in my garage I only have two outlets in the garage, and one of them is for the washer and dryer, and the other one is for. I'm sorry, I got three plugs. One of them is for the washer, one of them is for the dryer, and one of them is for a. I guess it's an electrical one for the refrigerator, but that's it. So if I plug in my extension cord out there to work on my airbrush, I have to unplug the dryer. It's just, they build everything as cheap as they can get away with it, and they got away with doing that. So, and I'm not an electrician or ever will be, and I'm not gonna tinker with that. But it's a small inconvenience, but it's just kind of like, really, Why wouldn't you have more plugs in your own garage? I could see not having a lot of outside plugs, because then you could have a neighbor that just hooks up to your thing and is running something on your power. I mean, I guess it could happen if you have a bad neighbor that's dishonorable, but in your garage, why not? Should be at least one on each wall. And the two side walls don't have any, so. Yeah. I had spray in here, but it's nice to just be able to clear the airbrush on top of the slab and not worry if it splatters everywhere, which, it's not really splattering everywhere, but I don't want to do it on tile. My hobby is not cleaning up. Okay, so we need to get the glue out, which we're getting kind of low on. I probably need to get one of these at some point. Old Elmer's glue. And the grass. Man, we're quiet this morning. Well, I hope I stay caffeinated, otherwise I'm going to get bored. But I got a lot to do. There's a lot of things I want to do this morning. So. That should be enough, I would think. And this part I'm about to do is the part that I wish I could do more than one vehicle at once, but I can't because this stuff will dry out on me by the time I get around to the other side. And then just go ahead and just put the glue on all these things. And then go back and grass them all, but I can't. I tried doing that once, it didn't work out. That should work fine. All right, it's time to add some personality to these things. My grossly out of scale vehicle. Well, I think it worked. I think it works. I already had this. Some things bother some people, and some things, bother the different folks. This doesn't happen to bother me. It's either I gotta use this thing, paint it, and then know it's out of scale. It's just gonna be mostly as an objective marker to knock out pesky AA. All kinds of things bother other different folks. My pet peeve is people that will buy a container like one of these. This is one of my biggest pet peeves. Go to the store and you buy a container like this, right? People won't take the label of it off, of what it is. What are you going to do, resell it? It's just distracting. It's like, oh, there's a label. What's it say? Oh, it's just a freaking label that tells you that it's a freaking box. Well, no shit, it's a box. Take the damn label off. I don't mind that this vehicle is 187th when it's 172. Some people's head would spin around and they'd go nuts. Doesn't bother me. Make sure you take a label off your box, though, damn it. I've gone to places and taken other people's labels off. I don't care. It's not your box. I don't give a shit. You're stealing that then. If you're going to wear a hat, take the freaking sticker off the hat, man. Unless you plan on, do you want to look like somebody just walked out of a store with something? Because that's what you look like. See, told you, no filter. Good morning. Amazing what you've done to that old Roco half-track. Remember those old Matchbox kits were my only option in a small town I grew up when I was younger. Yeah, I'm going to zoom in on it in a second. I didn't do anything, man. It did itself. This stuff is just so easy. You just have to experiment and not give up and keep tinkering with it. Because I was not happy with this thing. I have to show you pictures of what this looked like where I first gave it paint. I'm like, this thing's going to suck. All right, so we got that out of the way. We know it's going to suck. All right, now let's try to improve it. And just keep tinkering it. You'll see amazing things that other people do, and you don't get to see the processes that they go through. I mean, you do here, but, there's some real wizards out there on the internet, and they're no different than you and me, Mr. Barnes, welcome. And let's put some tufts on this thing, and then I'll show you what this thing looks like. But yeah, what's amazing is you look Roco mini tanks, like, oh yeah, those are a piece of shit, and they kind of are, but they have details on them. They're really well detailed, and you wouldn't think that they were. Nah, we're talking about it. I'll go ahead and zoom in now. And in particular. Now, I don't know if they're 100% accurate, but they're accurate enough that there's enough details on there that they look interesting. And the road wheels on this thing are the shining light of this particular vehicle. Whoever made the mold for them did a really good job. Now, I don't know if they're accurate. I don't know if they have the right bolt pattern. I am not a bolt pattern road wheel Nazi, okay? There's other things that are more important than the right road wheels. But look, I mean, those freaking wheels are beautiful. Those interleaving, you know what I mean, interlocking wheels. They're cast really, really well. For, a POS. This is, not a highly detailed kit, but the front tires are nice. I mean, it's a nice little model, actually. The bench had some nice detail on it. I mean, it's got some rivets that are on the bed that are very well made. Every one of them is perfectly on there. You don't have misshapen rivets. This is some nice stuff on it. I'm just adding detail to the details that are already there. So, yeah. And the thing I will say again, the lighting in here is awesome for me. It's not so awesome for you guys. This doesn't really look like that. That almost looks like lemon yellow. Let's see. I'm always struggling with trying to show you guys what things really kind of look like. It still looks kind of greenish. And then you go in the natural light, it looks totally different. But that's why I always like to say, let me step away from it and take a look at it, because it looks different when you're 3 feet away. And what I've tried to do with my painting style is that it looks good up close and it looks good at a distance, because some people paint like I like to see it at 3 feet away. And that's important. That's where you normally are looking at it. But you don't want to get too close to it and go, I'm naturally nearsighted. So if it looks like crap up close, it's like I'm torturing myself, because that's what I see all the time, and yeah. So even something really basic that's really old, although I think this is not some of their ancient Roco ones, like the Panzer 3s and 4s. The Panzer IVs, I had some Panzer IVs that were terrible. Like the front of the turret wouldn't even, you couldn't even lock it in the right way. It's just weird. But I actually enjoy painting things that are crappy better, because a lot of things you can improve with a decent paint job, you know, and things that are really detailed, you can only fuck up. But it's a great hobby. You just got to keep plugging at it. You know, you go and you see things like this. We're always talking about the Games Workshop folks that paint, that are wizards. They're truly wizards. Now, I'll be honest with you. If here I go again with that saying, I need to come up with a different saying. If one of those wizards took me in, and they're like, "All right, Tony, I'm going to pay you your salary. This is my dream job. I'm going to pay you your salary you're making now, and you can just paint with me." Oh, please, master. And we went through the steps. I'd be able to paint stuff exactly like them because I know it's a trick. It's just trial and error kind of stuff. So if you show me a method, step by step, how you're doing it, and we do it together, I'm certain I can do it. Okay, but you know, this is this paint set here. It's just like Games Workshop stuff. You look at these tanks, you're like, oh man, these look freaking awesome. You know, and there's examples of them and stuff like that. You know, my stuff looks pretty close. I mean, you can't tell because of the lighting here. It's getting too much. It's too bright. It's too bright for the shadows that are in that picture. But you know, these colors come out like those colors. You know, as I first started using these colors, I'm like, this doesn't look anything like the same color. Well, you got to add the other ones on there, and they work really well. So you got to just stick to it. You know, not be discouraged by stuff that you know you see that looks awesome. You know, anything you see that people paint that you love, whether it's in magazines and stuff, those guys didn't paint in 5 minutes. They didn't use the dip method. Okay. It spent a long time adding a little scratch, a little detail here, a little bit of modulation, make it look interesting. It doesn't happen overnight. So, remind me to stop staying up all night playing games with friends online. Well, that's something I don't do. But I don't have any friends that play games online. And I don't want to play with people that I don't know because they can, you know, there's just no honor, you know. Would you end up staying up all night playing? I got to bed. I didn't get home until almost 11:30 last night. So I was going to shoot a video last night of the stuff of my haul. Although I didn't haul that much stuff, but I got to go to a real store that had real merchandise in it that was really good prices on it. We'll talk about that later. Shot that video this morning. Okay, tough time. Yeah, I'm not worth a damn staying up anymore. I can't. I really made it a point to not scream yesterday on the roller coasters, but I guess the last one just... It's pretty cool going to a whole park where my daughter didn't remember going to it, and every roller coaster was new to her. That was pretty cool. So, I haven't done this in a long while. I was playing Magic the Gathering with some new friends that are on Friends of Friends on Discord. I tried Discord, and I can never remember the name Discord. I couldn't turn it off. It was on my phone, and it turned it off. Anyone do a trade-in with Noble Knight Games by chance? Never done it. I don't want to pay for shipping, and I certainly don't want to go to the post office. I would almost throw my stuff away before I'd mail it to the post office. I don't know how it is. My initial reaction is negative towards doing trade-ins, And it's kind of like you see all the time, and you listen to any kind of radio, or I don't anymore, but they used to say, you got to buy gold, you got to buy gold, you got to buy gold, you got to buy gold. Okay. Or, it's like the same thing coin collecting, You have this penny that's worth, you look, it's a nickel, and you look at it, and it's like, oh, it's worth $2.50. So you go somewhere, well, how much will you give me for it? 53 cents. I'm like, it's worth $2.50. Yeah, they're the ones that want to make it all. So, I feel like trading stuff in is only alternative if the alternative is to throw it, you're just going to throw it away. It has no value to you. Maybe I'm wrong, but it sure seems to be that way. A baseball card is worth $100. All right, I'll give you $16.50 for it. What the hell, Well, they may be sitting on it for a while, One, two. I hope I have more lowland shrubs. I think I bought another box. This is the one I have more than anything else, but we're just on a tear. We're on a tear of building stuff, and we're going through supplies now. Some of this paint I've had for 20 years, but man, we're going through. I might as well pull all the ones for all these guys. Let's do an average of 3 for each one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Count with Tony. 11, 12. I won't need more than 12. Run out of one thing, run out of something else. Again, you have to pay for shipping. Actually, I don't want to pay for shipping. What I really don't want to do is go to the damn post office. Well, the items have no value to me except they have they have value to a place like Noble Night Games. What you do is submit a list of items you want to get a quote on, and then they send you shipping tags. Well, that doesn't sound horrible. No, try it. Okay. I bet there's somebody who has a YouTube video on their experience with that. I'm just going to guess. I'm going to roll the dice and say probably somebody has done a YouTube video on what they sold on Noble Night. I could be wrong, but that will be a valuable video. You would value it. You can see what are the any pitfalls that they experienced maybe in doing that operation. 4, 5, 6, 7. Ten of these should be fine. I've had a couple of experiences with Noble Night, and they haven't been the best. So, they have a problem with combining shipping on items that you buy from them. It's not automatic, You got to be careful. They do have a lot of products, but it's not someone I wouldn't do business with. There's only a couple places that fall into that category, fortunately. And it makes sense. I mean, if you're doing hobby stuff, okay, people that do things people that could potentially be interested in things from Noble Night are probably, again, we're just rolling the dice. But then again, I like to play games that involve die rolling. I'm going to say 1% of the population. And that may be a lot of people, but that's also not a lot of people. There's a lot of people that you're never going to get their business because it's just something they're not interested in, If Joanne Fabrics had this campaign that they were going to put on, said we need to get more males to go to our store, they're going to have an uphill freaking battle. Okay, unless they have serve alcohol there or something like that, it's just going to be something that just males aren't interested in. Sorry, I go in there and you don't have to really tempt me that much, but, I'm artsy. I could turn some items never used in the store credit towards item I would use a great deal. Never order from them off eBay. I bought from them direct from their site. So, my experience lately is I would rather buy from eBay or Amazon, because there is more of a sense of urgency for them to mail items to you if there's somebody overseeing their operations. And I don't necessarily mean that from Noble Knight specifically, but my experience has been because eBay is driven, in my opinion, heavily by your feedback rating. People don't want to get a bad feedback, so they don't wait a week to send the item to you. I don't think it's a matter of not getting the item. I think it's a matter of, not making it a priority to, to get the item to you. Or maybe, they sell things on eBay, but we only mail things on the weekend, which I understand. It's a pain in the ass for me to mail something not on a weekend. But as a consumer, not if that's your job. If your business is all you do is manage, XYZ hobbies, you should mail no matter what day of the week it is. If you're doing it as a side gig and you've got another, 50-hour a week job, then yeah, it's, what are you going to do? Mail them on your lunch break? No. So it seems to me that you get better response from people if there's an oversight, meaning, if they do a shitty job, eBay finds out about it, and then eBay, then they got to write this litany of responses and bullshit to it. Just freaking get your consumers the stuff that they paid for, and in their hands, so they'll shut the hell up. And I just feel like there's just an extra safety thing on there. I had that problem with the vendor that I had done a sale with and never told me about the sale, and they ended up canceling the sale, but it was a couple months later. And I actually never had it happen to me before. But that's because I didn't use PayPal. I went through their own website, and it's just weird. I've never had that experience before. And it all worked out in the end, but it's a little stressful. Hobbies shouldn't cause you stress. Stress you get paid for. Okay, so here is this little objective half track. And this is like a perfect objective that, you have some guys that need to knock it out. Like partisans. That's a perfect, you got somewhere in Normandy, partisans have to go knock this thing out. Because you want the Allied Yabos or whatever the hell to still do their thing. So, okay, so this one's done. Now this one's more difficult because it's got more surface area on it. Well, is it? One of these we have to hide the road wheels. Let's play hide the road wheels on this guy. And we got to put a bush there. And I didn't leave myself enough space here. So can I get away with putting a bush like it just ran through it? I bet I can. Yep. I'm going to do that. And I may actually find this road wheel floating around somewhere and put it back in there. So I'm just going to take this bush and stuff it in there. It's done. See, I'm telling you, man, you can't let little things like that, I'm more careful than 90% of the people that do this hobby. And shit happens. I'm sitting there being careful. Boom, it flies. Okay, it should be right here. I'll get it in a second. Scour the whole thing, it freaking disappeared. Now, I did look underneath the freaking chair because we know that's a hidey hole now. But whatever, man, you just can't be discouraged. Just move on. Like, oh, really? You think you're going to keep me from finishing you? Fuck you. You're going to be on the battlefield and there's a Soviet vehicle that's going to put holes in your ass. Screw you, damn pacifist vehicle. No, you will go to war and you're going to lead the front lines and you're going to go in reverse. Bastard. Nazi bastard. You've had a real stressy week with an Etsy order. It's finally on its way. So I've had a problem with an Etsy order as well for many months, and I have hounded and hounded and hounded and hounded and hounded these people to not get forgotten. And I'm still going to give them a positive review, but I don't get paid for that. I don't do that to my customers. Just give me half the customer service I provide to my customers on a work day. That's it. That's not too much to ask. I do it for me. I want to shut them the hell up and move on to something else, not keep regurgitating the same problem. So supposedly it got mailed out last week. I'm not holding my breath, but I'll still do a review on it, and I'll give them a positive review. I don't care, if it's what it is. At least it got fixed. You don't have it yet. Sorry to be negative, but what kind of an item was it, Barnes? I don't want you to necessarily call somebody out, but what type of, necessarily the people it comes from, but what type of an item was it from Etsy? Was it terrain? Was it a 3D printed something or another? Oh shit, we gotta do the grass first. I did open a case. Well, did I? I contacted them immediately, but it's just been back and forth on that. 3D figures, okay. Yeah, I did open. It's not, the reality is it's not something that we can't live without, fortunately. It's not like this is going to make us go bankrupt if we don't get it. It's just going to be like, and I don't want to make negative videos. I don't want to make a video like, hey, these guys suck, and here's why. It's just not me. Because then you got to defend yourself, and I'm not a part-time lawyer or full-time lawyer. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in having arguments with people, especially since a lot of people like having arguments and not being rational. So I don't want to make negative videos. I also don't want to make videos like this one guy that, who is this that does this? Oh, it's one of the guys I follow on firearms. He never has anything bad to say about anybody. Okay, I don't need to kiss people's ass either. I'm just saying that, I don't need to make a bashing video. It's somewhere in the middle is where I like to kind of go. I don't want to be sponsored by anybody, and then I can't say, realistic things about them. But at the same time, I don't need to go and, these people are the Antichrist. Because they might have just had a bad day. Maybe it's something that's not really their fault, 3D figures. It's still better. It's still better than the fights that you can have. I just can't imagine getting a 3D printer and just like, let's say I wake up this morning, I can't wait to build that Martyr 2 and then paint it this evening. And then I go to sleep and it's mismolded. Fuck, I have to start over and redo it. And then it gets screwed up again. And I can just see that happening constantly and hating this hobby because of it, Am I a firearms enthusiast? I would say no, because those people would have a ton. No, I have a few. I enjoy doing it. I don't go out very often, but I did do a lot of research before I got into it, and enjoy watching several of the videos. But I would not call myself an enthusiast. But I will tell you, anybody who says that wargaming is expensive is a moron, because wargaming is one of the cheapest, other than like whittling. This is a cheap hobby. You just gotta buy and then use what you buy, okay? And then you're fine, If you buy a lot of stuff and you use a lot of stuff, well, you're getting your money's worth. But just buying things and just storing them there and not doing them, which we've all done. We've all bought things and not done anything with them. But that is an expensive hobby. Firearms is an expensive hobby. Boating is absurd. The idea that a boat that carries the same amount of people that costs multiple times what your vehicle cost is absurd. absurd. I'm not talking about yachts. I'm just talking about, get a 17-foot boat or whatever with with a outboard engine. It costs 3 times what my car costs. That's absurd. And you only use it, if you're lucky, one weekend out of every month. Yeah, communication. Just be communicative. What weaponry? I have none. It's all got lost in a fishing accident. I do not have any rifles. So, now I know some people that have a lot. And I have no problem with. I came into the game very, very late as an adult already. It's something I never did with my dad. My dad had a few, but he used them for target practice in the 70s. And he's like, there's no play. I'm like, Dad, can we go shooting or whatever? Just killing cardboard. I'm not a hunter or anything. Just for fun, discipline. It's cool. You got to be safe, but it's cool. Never did it with my dad. I remember I did it in the Boy Scouts one time. They gave us a mat that you lay down on. I was like 14 years old, and they gave you it was a 22, and it must have been bolt action. So it was a bolt action 22, and nobody hurt themselves. Nobody put it in front of their head or anything. But it was the 80s, They did different shit back then, I don't think firearms are dangerous, but you gotta, you gotta treat things with respect. They're not. These are toys. You can go around and put this is what you play with. The other things are just a tool. But I never did it with my dad. Kind of regret that, but he didn't want to. I am not paying attention. But if I have been to the range and seen people that are careless, and I'm like, I'm leaving. There's no reason why anyone should ever have any kind of a negligent discharge, etc. So I am a firm believer in everybody should have the right to do that, but you got to be safe, okay? You can't just be careless and shit like that, You're only allowed one fatal mistake, so. But I've gone with the daughter. We haven't gone in a year or so. It's a pain for us because we can't go on property. Well, I don't want to live in a place where I don't want to live in a place that's country enough to do that kind of thing. But, go to the range, you got to pay to go there or go to the free one that's 53 miles one way. So, but it's something I never got a chance to do with my dad. He really didn't want to. He didn't think he claimed I wasn't interested in it. I'm like, you just said you can't go shoot. There's nowhere to shoot around here. Okay. I guess not, Dad. You're the adult. You should know. But that's just one of those things that most people do with their father. But I basically came with kind of an empty slate, which I think was kind of an advantage because people are extremely opinionated about stuff when it comes to that. There's a lot of people that are on a crusade for different things, like, oh, these are terrible, these are good, Just learn, make up your own conclusions, kind of thing. Yeah, catch you later, Tony Barnes. Good day, sleep well. Yep. I don't freak out about them. We had some customers that were coming by at work that they were a contractor that was in Mississippi, I think, and they were doing work in Florida. And the guys come in, and they're in this work truck, and there's like 6 or 7 of them. There's a big work truck, and they're bringing kind of a little tag-along trailer behind it because they were going to pick up a product from work and go take it to a job site in Florida and use it. And they come over to the plant. Every one of them is carrying a sidearm on their belt. M&P 9s, I think, is what they had. Pistols. It's unusual. Doesn't freak me out. Just don't Don't grab it. Treat it with respect, right? Don't try to be a hero. Doesn't bother me at all. It's an unusual sight to see. Florida's not an open carry state. And I don't think it should be. I mean, I think if you're in the woods or something like that, it's fine. I mean, I never go in the woods, but if you're in the woods, I'd be worried about wild animals. I'm not necessarily worried about other humans. But there's like 6 guys with a pistol on their hip at work. And, they weren't being aggressive or anything. So I went out and they loaded their product, gave them the paperwork. I said, hey, just so you guys know, Florida is not an open carry state. You guys can get in trouble with the law. Oh, that's okay. We got a concealed carry permit. I'm like, that's like saying, you can't fly this 747. Don't worry, I got a driver's license. It's not really compatible, but whatever. Have fun getting in trouble with a cop. Because most cops don't really know every single bit of the law. Law's too complicated. So they're going to have a problem with you even if you are doing something, okay. Just, your best bet is just, keep a low profile. You, if you're not doing anything illegal, then just keep a low profile and they will leave you alone. There's always bigger things to mess with, but it's the same way as a car. Just because your car can go 130 miles an hour doesn't mean you go 130 miles an hour through a neighborhood. You got to use freaking common sense. Just because a firearm can kill somebody doesn't mean that you're going to be killing people with a firearm. And the thing that really surprises me, though, is that you'll take, and this has actually happened with other things before. My daughter has a friend of hers that her mother is not well. And I don't think that she's just not well balanced. She's bipolar or whatever. And she's kind of made some really bad choices in her life, and it's kind of affected her kids. And and my daughter's friend, it has this almost like a phobia that she thinks she's going to turn out like her mom. And I don't understand not having confidence in your own abilities. It's like, I don't know, it's just different. Like if there's somewhere to go and drive, I want to drive because I know that I'm not going to push it on, rainy weather or curve or something like that, or get too close to somebody else. Just like if somebody's going to have a firearm, I want it to be me because I know I'm not going to do anything stupid. But her friend is worried that she's going to turn out to be, an unbalanced person like her mom. And I'm thinking, well, wait a second. First of all, now you've got a negative reinforcement. You know how someone you don't like how someone behaves when you're on the other end. So now don't be that way. But I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it differently. But I just don't understand that. There's crazy people out there and they do weird things with, say, firearms, for instance. I better not have one because I may do crazy things. I'm like, well, wait a second. What? Are you not a responsible person that goes to work and stuff? I mean, I don't understand it. I don't understand that kind of logic. Responsibility is extremely empowering. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's why middle schoolers are so much of a pain in the butt. Grade school, under 5th grade and stuff, they're just kids. But once they start getting into the early teens, they got this attitude. They think that all that, but they don't have any responsibility for the most part. High school students now they got jobs, they got places they got to do. It's empowering to do your own stuff for yourself. I guess it's another life lesson episode today, but I'm just talking out loud. That's just, I've heard several people that are in the 17 to 25 range group and they don't want to drive. Like, why not? I mean, I understand if you don't have the money to get a vehicle. Like, my parents didn't give me a vehicle. I didn't have the money to have a vehicle. I I had to ride my bike everywhere I wanted to go, you know? But not wanting to drive and you know, and not being Amish, like you don't want to go anywhere, but I'm just saying that, you know, you let somebody else drive for you. Like, why? You know, it's empowering. I don't know. I'm from a different age, I guess. So I would not call myself an enthusiast. An enthusiast, like, you know, keeps buying, you know, multiple firearms each year and no. Again, you can't throw money at the problem. Damn it, he's not here to hear it. You can't throw money at the problem, and you got to be happy with what you have. You know? I don't understand people that collect toys and don't open them. I don't understand people that drive, like maybe collect a car and never drive it. Like, why? Just take a picture of it, put it on Pinterest, and you look at it whenever the hell you want. You know? Buy a firearm, not shoot it. Why? It doesn't make any sense. Okay. Stoogie is done. Right? That's what I gotta call it. I've called them Stuggies forever, but I've always called them Stugs. So if I have to call them Stoogs, then I guess it's Stoogie. All right, who's up next? We're doing the ones that are cramped first. Let's do the old Jagdpanzer 4. So I did watch a lot of gun videos before I got into it, but I don't like videos that take something that you need to be responsible with and just play fun at it. Like there's a lot of stuff that is just people just being stupid with firearms. Or mountain bikes. People that ride mountain bikes on like a crest of a freaking hill where they can fall. Like, do you not value your freaking life? You know? That just sends the wrong message. Like, you don't care if you die. Parkour off of buildings and stuff like that. Like, come on, man. Be responsible. I've called them Stugs for so many decades now, I can't bring myself to say Stug. It sounds almost childish. That's right. Look out for the Stug. It's underneath your bed. Stug. Stuggy. Stug Life. They have those t-shirts that have a Sturmger shirts on them. Stug Life. I couldn't get one of those shirts. Nobody would know what it is. I encounter people. What's that mean? Idiot. Get out of here. Hetzer's got a Hetz. All that kind of stuff. Deep Red, do you prefer, are you a Dunkelgelb guy or are you a Panzergray, or do you like them both? decided to put some way back in there. And one of the things I was actually looking for in the store they didn't have, and that is there's a couple different manufacturers that make like pre-made like branches that are already with like stuff on it. I mean, I guess I could make my own, but I have to sub some of the work out. And they didn't have any of those. You know, something like this could certainly use some. And I wouldn't necessarily make them permanent. You could like make them removable. Maybe I should try making some at some point. That's it. Put me on the spot. I kind of like both Panzer Gray. Looks cool. But damn, ambush camo is awesome. Did I show you my primitive attempt? Primitive because it's 20 years ago. I like to call it pre-internet because I wasn't influenced. I wasn't able to learn from things other people did on the internet because the internet was in its infancy. And this is the Hasegawa Panther that is okay. Today's standards of what I do, it's pretty sorry, especially the basing on it. Let me have you take a look a little bit on here. I think it, other than the fact that it is not faded at all, I think it looks palatable. I may just fix it instead of repainting the whole thing. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. Depends on how thick it is. I'm probably going to repaint it. These things have gotten really expensive. I remember when these things were like $10 or something like that. A Hasegawa kit now is like freaking, it's the same kit and it's almost $30. I checked the price on it yesterday. Because I got something that involves some late war vehicles. I figured, oh, maybe I'll build some late war vehicles just for yucks. You know? I got one of you guys that's always wanting to do a Sturm Morse or Tiger. Well, that's another vehicle that'd be great as a target, you know, because it only fires like one time a game, you know, in my game. But I think this thing needs some TLC, you know, bring it up to the standards. But it's better than most war game things I see out there, but that's not good enough for me. You know, I can do better. So we tried to. You had that same kit? Love Hasegawa. Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. And I'm not like a Nazi about, you know, well, this isn't exactly 1/72nd scale. Look, it's a war game thing. I use 76 and 72nd interchangeably. I prefer 72nd just because it looks, can't see anything wrong. Okay, well, we're going to do, I may just leave this one as it is and we'll do other things, but yeah, the problem with the ambush is, there's certain things that got done in certain periods of times where I'm leery because they involve whitewash over them. And I'm going to get to whitewash, but I don't want to jump on it now. In other words, I got to do a lot of standard vehicles before I start doing a bunch of weird shit, you know? Like I'm going to have Soviet tanks that have camouflage on them. But you got to have a lot of regular green ones before you start doing a bunch of weird things, you know, like 10-1 or something like that. I don't want to start getting into whitewash and then get discouraged, you know, by that. But so if you're doing something like Battle of the Bulge, all those vehicles are going to have whitewash over some kind of ambush scheme, or I don't know. I do like the ambush scheme, especially with something like a Jagdpanzer IV Lang or a little Hetzer. So, all right, this stuff, man, this Elmer's is drying really fast. I'm surprised. It's like congealing. Let's put a happy little grass back here. When it comes to camouflage stuff for the Germans, there's a couple things I don't like. And I don't like anything that, even when it's done right, it looks like shit. And there's lots of examples of it. Like winter painting, there's some winter painting that, like some guys use like white chalk. I'm not doing that. It doesn't look right. Even though it really happened, it just doesn't look right. Even if I pull it off accurately, it looks like I did a crappy job. There's some paint schemes that are done with brushes that just don't look right. So again, it's like a painting. You build things the way you want them to look, and there's lots of different ways to skin a cat, but I can't build every vehicle, so I might as well build the ones that are inspired the same way. Same thing. I don't like Dunkelgelb vehicles in 42. Some of them had them. There's one Panzer Division, a late one, the 22nd, that wasn't. I don't think it was built until very late in 1941. It wasn't put together until very late in 41. So when it really went into action was in 42, and it was one of those that was equipped with the Czech 38 tanks. But all their Czech, and it operated in southern Russia, and their Czech 38 tanks were painted in Dunkelgelb. There's many examples of it. It just looks wrong. It looks wrong as you guys say across the pond, to my eye, it looks wrong. A Dunkelgelb Czech 38, with a 37 millimeter gun. It just looks wrong. So I won't do that kind of stuff, But it's all personal preferences. I am not a fan of the time period where the German infantry sucked, meaning like Volksgrenadiers divisions. I always envision there's Germans are high quality. I mean, yes, I know that there weren't, but when I'm talking to wargaming is Germans are generally have better experience in whoever they're fighting. There's just less of them, Equal or better experience than their enemies. There's just less of them, But I tend to like 1941 Barbarossa stuff. The desert's kind of a mixed bag because the British troops that fought in the desert weren't of poor quality by any stretch of the imagination. So the desert's kind of parody land. I like the desert. We'll get there eventually. And the desert, I think the desert is really interesting because I find the British vehicles in the desert just as interesting or more interesting than the Afrika Korps vehicles. I really like the desert, the British desert vehicles. Don't care if they broke down all the time. Look, German shit broke down all the time too. So, and that's all we're going to do on this guy. It spins around nicely. Not that that's really of any value. Let's just go ahead and take this turret off. Get it out of the way. I had some guy that made a comment on one of the posts that said, "Oh, Soviet vehicles don't look like that." Well, I am taking some of the more interesting Soviet vehicles or examples and painting them because who wants to be excited about a vehicle that is just all green? It has little or no markings. That's why the Germans are so popular. It's not everybody wants to, take on the world or be a Nazi. It's just their stuff is really interesting, interesting looking, has a lot of personality. Well, you can make the other nations have just as much personality. You got to pick and choose. I have a whole bunch of T-34 85s to do. You better believe they're going to look awesome. Shermans. I did the Shermans first. I'm like, Shermans are boring. Nah, no, they're not. You can make them boring. You can also give them a lot of personality. What's that saying I never heard before? I forgot what it was. I heard it for so long. Word boy or whatever. People that Wehrmacht fanboys. I'm a fanboy of everybody's tanks. I think they're cool. You know? Believe there's a Stug 4. If that's so, what's the difference from a Jagdpanzer 4? A lot. A lot and not a lot. Well, your timing is perfect. Why is your timing perfect? Well, because I have one of these finished, and the first vehicle I finished was a Stug 4. And I have a Stug 3. Okay. I love sharing my passion that I have with other folks. That's why I would hate to teach. I would love to teach, but I don't want to teach people that are interested in learning. Okay, now they may be of different sizes because they're all not of a certain scale, perfect scale, so here we go. Here's the lesson. And if I don't cover everything perfectly, then, well, I didn't have an outline. All right, let me get a sip here. My voice is a little on the hoarse side. This is a Eshi Jagdpanzer 4. This is a Fujimi Eshi Jagdpanzer 4 on 1/72nd scale. This is a Fujimi Stug 3 G in 1/76, which somebody told me is actually a kit from another company called Nito. When I bought it, it was packaged by Fujimi, so that's what I'm going with. And this one is a company that's no longer in business called BP Cast. It's a resin kit, and this is a Stug 4. So this is a Panzer III chassis. And you can see by the road wheels, it's got 6 road wheels here on the bottom. Well, this one's missing one that flew around somewhere. Let's go to the right side. 6 road wheels on the bottom. It's a Panzer III chassis. The Panzer III and the Panzer IV chassis are similar in size. The Panzer III tank just had a smaller turret ring, so it couldn't be upgraded. But that's a different thing. But road wheels, we got 6 on the bottom. The Panzer IV has chassis has 8 road wheels on the bottom. That's the main difference. This is a little narrower, regardless of the model. This is a little longer hull and a little narrower. I believe it's narrower. I could be wrong, but and the other thing is interesting about the Panzer IVs actually do not have a turret that's in the center. It's off to the driver's side just a smidge, maybe even less than 10%. So there's more meat here than there is here, and that's just because of the drive axle that's got to go across it. I believe is the reason why, but that's not really noticeable on the chassis. So here's the chassis of both of them. These, I believe, got continued all the way through the war. The Panzer IIIs ended up being not, after like 1943, they really didn't start making them anymore because they found that the turret ring did not allow the 75 millimeter gun to fit in there well because of the size of the breech. Because they did put the short 75 that used to be on the Panzer IVs early war into the Panzer IIIN, but they didn't make that many of those, and they used those kind of like as support tanks or fill-ins. I guess the breech on that gun wasn't as big because it was a shorter one, but they never were able to get the long 75 in it, which is this gun here. Actually, all 3 of these have the same gun. This is a 48 caliber 75 millimeter gun. Okay, and what that means is if you look at something that's it's a 75 L48. 48 is how long the actual tube is in proportion to the the diameter. So you take 75 millimeters and you multiply it by the other number, which is 48, and that's the length of your gun barrel. And generally, I'm going to say almost always, the longer the barrel, the more penetrating power it has. So a 75-48 is going to have more penetrating power than a 75-24. So just higher muzzle velocity, gets more spin as it going out the tube. In the case of those two, it's a different round. All three of these have the same thing. I believe these were continued all the way through the war. And it was one of the most numerable vehicles that the Wehrmacht built. Armored fighting vehicles the Wehrmacht built. This is the same gun that's on the late war Panzer IVs, Jagdpanzer IV, Hetzer, and pretty much can knock anything out on the Western Front except some Churchills and maybe a Pershing, maybe Jumbo Shermans. Pretty much everything else I can think of right at the moment, it does fine against. Now the Eastern Front, the Russians make some nasty frontally armored bastards that this thing can't knock out. But this is, for all intents and practical purposes, the same gun as the PaK-40. It isn't, but it is. The PaK-40 is a 75L46. This is a 48. The ammo may be interchangeable between the two. But, so, they didn't have anything to do with the Panzer III chassis. They were geared up for the Panzer III chassis. And they just decided to produce these. And it made a decent vehicle. And they made lots of versions. I don't remember if they made a Stug A. I believe they probably did. So they made an A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. This is the G version, which is the latest version. None of them had a coaxial machine gun. None of them had a hull machine gun. So if they had a machine gun, it would be fired here. This one's in particular by I believe this is the loader. I believe the loader fires this one. But the first Marks didn't have any machine gun in them at all. I've got a Stug 3 E. It has no machine gun in it. They had some Panzer IV chassis for whatever reason that they did the same thing. So they built, and I don't want to quote exact numbers, you guys can look it up. They built almost 20,000 of these. They built about 1,200 of these. Something like that. If my numbers are off, my numbers are off. Look, I'm going off of memory. I don't want to sit there and look things up. You guys can look it up. This is a Stug 4. They didn't put these in specific units. They used them as replacements. So when these guys would find, if you find photo evidence, it's hard to find, okay, this unit had this many Stug 4. So they're kind of interchangeable or whatever. That's mainly the difference. The armor is equivalent on them. The gun is the same. They both have similar hatches. This had a little pintle mount that broke off because it was resin, so really the layout is the same. For all intents and practical purposes are the same. They have about 80 millimeters of front armor, 30 millimeters of side armor, not counting the Scherzen. So similar armor to this. This is actually supposed to represent a Panzer III G, which would have had a 75L43 gun. Tiny little bit. This was the first long 75 millimeter gun the Germans had. And they had them on the F2s first, and then they had them on the Gs. The H's now is basically the same tank as this for the most part. There's some differences, but with this gun. Guns are really similar. This one's a little bit better than that one. What else? Again, same kind of armor. I don't think any of the Mark IVs or Mark IIIs, ever the frontal armor went over 80 millimeters on the frontal face. So about the same armor as a Sherman, for the most part. You know, once you figure in the angle and all that kind of stuff in there, the equivalent. The Panzer IV, I don't know the numbers that made of these. They didn't make a ton of them. They didn't. I don't think they made more than 1,000. Again, my data's wrong. I'm just going off memory. I'm a war gamer, not a historian. I could look it up too, but this is just memory. I just embrace the fact that I'm going to make mistakes, you know. Same gun. Armor, side armor is about equivalent. Front armor is where the big difference is. I believe this has about 80 millimeters of armor, but it's sloped. So it ends up being equivalent to almost the armor in the front of a Panther. So this is very well armored from the front. Same kind of arrangement here, except it's got the round hatch on this side and the square one here. I don't know, you got a periscope that goes a big traverse on there. I don't think it has more than 30 millimeters of side armor on either one of them. The front is a lot more on this one. Gun's the same though. Mobility is about probably the same on both of them. This is probably, it's got to be a little bit slower. It's got the same engine, I think, and got more armor, so, you know, there you go. Sometimes these guys had machine guns that they could, you know, shoot out of the top. It's got an interesting thing. It's kind of a unique, it's got a plug here for the hull, and it just looks like a cone, and it's removable. I believe it pops out, and it's attached on a chain. But there's a light machine gun that's inside the crew compartment there. And unlike all other German tanks, or most other German tanks, they continued making, there's two basic German machine guns in the Second World War. The MG-34 and the MG-42. MG-42 started getting replaced about 1942. It is not tubular. It is rectangular in if you cut it diametrically, yeah, it's rectangular or square-ish, as opposed to being true tubular. So the tubular ones they normally put in the tanks. They kept manufacturing MG-34 all the way through the war, even though it tended to be more finicky in the weather and stuff like that. The 42 was a little bit more robust, had a little higher rate of fire, but basically the same firearm. They kept the 34 in the tanks because it was round, so if you turned it every which way, you know, it really wasn't a problem. The MG-42 was only used on a couple different vehicles, and one of them was this one. And it was just basically a pistol port. They would just push it out and stick a 42 through there and shoot it, and there was a loader that fired it. It's not really it's not a coaxial machine gun. It's like a kind of a hull machine gun, but it wasn't fired by the assistant driver. It was fired by the loader, I believe. But these guys, so let's talk about use. I don't know if you got a bunch of questions. I'll ask them in a second. And this is just what I know from years of being a World War II nut. I could get stuff wrong. I don't want to, but shit happens. The Stugs were originally an artillery branch. So they weren't tank destroyers. They were controlled by the artillery, and they were independent artillery brigades that were attached to different units, generally infantry divisions, but not permanently attached. When the Germans started to expanding into Panzer Grenadier divisions like Grossdeutschland, the SS divisions, they would have an integral Stug company in them. And then later on, they got used as replacement vehicles in some of those units. Both of these. And it's very difficult to find out which units got these. It was almost like they just kind of used them independently, and you get one of these and two of this one or whatever. And that was one of the big problems the Germans had, is that they did not have the production to produce a shitload of... They got outproduced big time, and they had to make do with what they had, which meant their spare parts was a nightmare. You know, everybody knows about the Germans' problem they ran into, they didn't have enough fuel. Well, they had too many different vehicles, and too many different spare parts, and it's like, you go and you beat the French. Well, you capture a bunch of French vehicles. So what do you do with the French vehicles? You either throw them away, impound them, or make do with them. Well, they made do with them. Well, if you make do with them and you got French vehicles on the Eastern Front, and it needs a road wheel, you've got to ship out French road wheels out to the Eastern Front. It's just a logistical nightmare, and it's overextending, all kinds of problems. So spare parts was just a nightmare for them. That's what you get for being a Nazi. But these guys, on the other hand, these were specifically attached to tank destroyer battalions. They were part of the tank destroyer battalions, and they had been sent, attached to these guys for a while. But these were not, for the most part, they may have been added companies. So I'm just thinking in my head that's generally what they did. But one of these, a paint scheme that I saw like this, one of the ones that I liked actually had 116th Panzer Division on it. So I don't know, that may not actually have been the case always, but I know the fact that these guys were definitely part of the artillery arm at the beginning of the war. That's how they were implemented. And but anyhow, hopefully that answers some of your questions. But all these three vehicles, very similar armor, if not almost identical. Panzer 3s and 4s kind of start the war around with 30, 40 millimeters of front armor, and they eventually get upgraded to like 80, and that's like where they stop. Nothing's got more than that. That kind of thing. So anyhow, let's see what you wrote. Stug 3 has so much character. It's possibly my favorite AFV of all time. Huh? Okay. Learning so much today. Yeah, I may not be able to tell you everything, but at least it will give you a stepping stone to start working on. Because sometimes things are overwhelming. And I've done that, like researching Shermans. Shermans are a nightmare. They got cast iron ones, and these guys were these, and then these, and then the Commonwealth got ones that were diesel, but also the Marines, but some of them the Soviets got. It's just, you need like a stepping stone. Okay, this is this way, and so you can learn from it, that kind of stuff. Your favorite Jagdpanzer, the Lang. Okay, they had to strengthen the road wheels cope with a 50, same as a Panther that they used. Yeah, I've seen models of the so it's this guy with the Panther's gun. So you got a gun that instead of being 48 caliber, it's 70 caliber. Same gun on the Panther, which in some respects actually penetrates more than the Tiger 1 tank. The first half of the road wheels I've seen be all steel, for the recoil. Because, this thing fires and, this thing's rocking for a while, But this is a really low silhouette. Which is really practical, I think the way you change the barrels also necessitated 334s inside versus outside. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff, that goes into all that play. But the other thing I read recently is, other than the Germans had to use the stuff that they had because, they decided to take on the whole frickin' world, okay, and they didn't have the production for it. They tended to upgrade their vehicles frequently from experience from their panzer crews. So it was like, say, the Soviets, they would have a problem with one of their vehicles, and they wouldn't upgrade it based on recommendations from the crews. As often, like, you just have to deal with it. Sorry, comrade. That's why there's millions of you, Whereas the Germans would always... So every time the Germans would tinker with something, of course it messed up their production, which was a problem to begin with, It took them a long time to really kind of streamline some of their production to more reasonable levels. The Germans produced more AFVs in 1944, I think, than all other years combined. I could be wrong. 43 was number 2, and then the third most produced year was 1945. And that was only half a freaking year. So 1944 was the peak of the Germans getting the shit bombed out of them, their industrial capacity. It was 1944. But yet they produced the most armored fighting vehicles in that year than in all the other years. And if it's not all the years combined, it's pretty close to that number, if I remember correctly. It's pretty amazing. That's because they didn't get their shit together, you know? So you have this idea of this saying that, you know, the Nazis supposedly being real detail-oriented. They weren't. They weren't. This myth that the Nazis were like, among other things, but just from what I've read, and this isn't really, I'm not interested in big strategic type reading games and political stuff. I'm interested in the, you know, I want to read the, you know, the tactical combat kind of stuff, because that's the stuff I'm going to play. I'm not motivated to play, you know, Advanced Third Reich where I want to move, you know, really high level things. I like the nuts and bolts. So that's the kind of stuff I like to read. But in my reading of nuts and bolts, I have come across a couple different themes, and you know, the Nazis were very good old boy. You know, you had all these departments, and they were always fighting for the limited resources they had. You know, and they were, you know, one of the things I was reading about, I didn't know a lot about this 2 years ago when I got back into World War II, is one of the guys that was in charge of supplying all the units, and I don't know what his name is. You guys can look it up. But like I said, this is just kind of, you guys kind of give you a feel for different areas that maybe you can extrapolate on. But one of the guys that was in charge of supplying all the supplies on the Eastern Front, whatever his name was, he was a top tier guy. He's probably someone you guys haven't heard of, because he's not like a Halder or anything like that. But like the, you know, the general, the Wehrmacht guy that was in charge of supplying all the, you know, we got to get however many train loads of fuel out to the Eastern Front. We need this many a day or whatever. You know, if he needed to promise, you know, 200 truckloads a day, he's like, yeah, I'll do it. And he never did more than like 50. He was just like incompetent. You know, they'll say, yeah, I'm going to do something, and then they wouldn't do it. And maybe they did get sacked later on, but it wasn't after multiple failings that this kind of stuff happened. And it's a perfect example is like, you know, when Goering was, oh yeah, we're going to supply the supplies for Stalingrad. We're going to do an airlift on Stalingrad so they can hold out until we come to their rescue. And they needed to do 400 units a day. And they did 50 or whatever. And I mean, it fell way short of what they were supposed to do. And they just let them get away with it. I mean, they didn't get, you know, shot, executed, whatever, you know. They just were grossly incompetent at what they did. And this happened time and time. And I'm not saying the Allies didn't do this stuff either, but you have this idea that the Germans are really competent and and that's just not the case. That's just not the case, as they did, you know, they did all kinds of, they did a lot with what they had, honestly, you know. So when you play war games, the Germans are very competent at a battalion and below level. You know, their junior officers are very well trained. They give them a lot of initiative. They have experience. They interlocking fields of fire. Everything works around their excellent machine guns. Fire maneuver, a good balance between aggressiveness and, you know, and finesse on that level. You get higher up in commands, you have gross negligence and incompetence that sets in, you know. So, you know, you've got these forces, the German forces, you know, you got the Lancers that have this elan that just get discouraged because they just don't get the materials that they need from higher echelons. And they're like, what's going on, you know? And there's a lot of other factors at play, but the Third Reich was not competent, you know, at all. You know, and I'm not saying that the Soviet Union was. I'm just saying it's just different. It's just different than you know, you think like, oh, that guy's, you know, a real detail Nazi. There's no such thing about it. There's no such thing as a detail Nazi. And I use that all the time. You know, I use that type of saying, you know, like if somehow you're like really, you know, there was like some really gross negligence. Thankfully, You know, thankfully they didn't win the war, but that's just one of those misnomers, those perpetual things that keep coming up. You know, on a tactical level, absolutely. The other thing that I noticed, and is the Germans were really successful early on for a couple of reasons. First of all, they caught a lot of people with their pants down, and they had this. Hitler really didn't meddle, and it's not that Hitler was the most incompetent person on the planet, but he didn't like to make decisions he didn't want to have to make. So, like, he couldn't make up his decision on certain things, and you lose valuable time, and then maybe you lose the element of surprise. But after December 41, he starts getting really involved in stuff to a level where he creates not analysis paralysis, but the guys don't have the freedom of, the divisions and corps don't have the freedom of action that they used to have to be able to capitalize on things that would happen on the front lines that would give them huge advantages despite their numbers. So for instance, you would have, Soviets would just blunder into something, and because the Germans had freedom of movement, they would be able to fall back and encircle them and crush them and not take that many losses. Among other things. I mean, there was obviously the air power was a big thing too. But that's one of the things that once Hitler starts meddling is like everything's got to go through him, and you can't capitalize on what's the word I'm thinking of? It's the phrase targets of opportunity. Targets of opportunity get missed because of how long it takes for a decision to get made. And the ones that seem to be really successful, and you hear about, are guys that just said, fuck it, we're going to do this now, and if Hitler beheads me, so be it. And the ones that didn't, it's just a factor. It's just one of those things. They had a command economy. It was inefficient as they lacked the high level of mechanization. They were not as flexible in making changes. Allies particularly benefited from capitalism. Yeah, it's a good thing they didn't win. What's the other thing I say? If you're going to let the Germans win a war, let them win the first one. So one of my alternatives. The First World War should have never been fought, but I'm just saying that if the Germans win the second one, this Earth is a bad place. Is a really, really, really bad place. If they win the first one, I don't know. Maybe things actually turn out better now. Let's not build a time machine. So, but I like to read about the nuts and bolts, but sometimes other things get worked in there, and it's stuff that I really haven't thought of much about, because it's not something that's in my area of interest. I can't be into everything, so. Like, I'm never going to read Mein Kampf. It just doesn't interest me. I'm not interested in that kind of stuff. So if some of that stuff works its way into, oh, look at this one. This one's missing another road wheel. And I bought this way. So we're going to have to put a bush right there. Oh, you're showing us all your mistakes. No, I'm showing you that shit happens. And don't let it bring you down. Just power through it, because you're never going to have the perfect model. You're never going to have, I build the model, oh shit, and this one, the turret's wrong. It's a war game model. You do the best you can with what you have, and you move forward. And yeah, if you're going to go buy something, maybe look in to see which one's an accurate kit. But don't get bogged down and you end up doing nothing instead. See? What road wheel? Never heard of her. But the other thing in reading, and I'm not really interested in the political part of it, is, as a kid, and I've mentioned this before, I mention this actually quite frequently because I think it's kind of an important thing to look at, that I think a lot of us that are war gamers primarily, because I want to play because I want to see these cool things in action destroying each other. I mean, war is evil. Okay, it's bad, but it happened. And And it's cool seeing these things interact with each other. That's it, you know. I don't really care about anything else, but the yeah, remember this is no filter talking. Um, when I was a kid, when I was a young adult, 11, 12 years old, getting into World War II, I thought World War II was a perfect balance between brute force and technology. Technology wasn't so overhead that you couldn't like encounter people. Like I grew up as a naval war gamer, and I hated aircraft carriers because as naval air, you know, I like the battleships and the destroyers. But aircraft carriers just say basically, oh, we're outnumbered, we're not going to have this fight, and then there's no battle to war game. Okay, I'm not saying that they're not an effective weapon realistically. I'm just saying as a wargaming person that wants to see battleships attack each other, aircraft carriers suck. They take all the wind out of the sails, you know? So, where was I going with this? Hold on, coffee. I'll probably think about it in a second. I don't know where I was going with the aircraft carrier thing. It led into something else, but anyways, what I was getting at as a getting into that to me was World War II was just the Germans' payback for not winning the first one. That's on the surface. That's what I thought. Because remember, I'm not reading Mein Kampf. I'm not reading about the concentration camps in detail. I'm not reading about all that political stuff. To me, it's just war. Like, okay, we didn't win the first one. Let's try again, right? And that's why the Germans were super motivated to be aggressive and and that kind of stuff. I mean, but and again, I don't read those things. I have no interest in reading political stuff. I don't want to know about Hitler. That's just not really on the stuff that interests me. But as I'm reading stuff as an adult, and there's more things to draw from, you start finding out that, and I remember talking about World War II with my dad. We always talked about the Eastern Front. My dad was not a war gamer by any stretch of the imagination, but he had a good balance of things. It was always like, the Germans could have beaten the Russians if they just befriended the Ukrainians. Like, have them come over here. Look, the Ukrainians and other people in Russia, not necessarily the Ukrainians, but just, hey, listen, we're not going to send you to the Gulag. We may not be a society of freedom, but we're better than the communists. Okay, which I don't think is that hard to do, to be better than a communist. Okay, somehow the Nazis found a way to screw that one up too. That's all they had to do, right? Because if nobody's going to fight for the Soviets, they won. And if the Germans beat the Soviets, the war's over. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, But you start reading this other stuff, and that could never have happened because the Germans went to fight the Soviet Union not just because communists were bad, but because the people that lived there were subhuman and needed to be exterminated. So it's not like, let's bring these people over and, there'll be more freedom and the world will be a better place. It's that these people are insects and we need to kill every one of them. And when you start looking at it that way, that it's a war of extermination, a lot of it kind of makes sense. Not really makes sense because it doesn't make any sense to me. Because to me, a Russian and German's the same thing. I mean, they're not. They speak a different language, but they look the same. There's lots of Slavs that look exactly like Germans. So, but you're looking at it from the perverted Hitler view, Nazi view of the Second World War. They would have never done that. Now they still made exceptions. There's some guys on the ground that are like, look, we got these Ukrainian guys here, and we can either ship them out or we can have them create some police thing and they can police their own people and maybe round up some other people from us. But from the top down, that really wasn't the intent. The intent was to exterminate these people. These are on this land. We want this land. And not only do we want this land, we don't want these people here. And when you look at it from that standpoint, it kind of changes the whole, the outlook at it. Because I personally don't think the Russians and the Germans are that much different from the thing. Now, it depends where you are in the whole scheme of things. I think that if you're a German, you're probably better off with the Nazis, only because they're probably going to treat you better as a soldier. I think the Wehrmacht treated their soldiers better than the Soviet Union treated their soldiers. Now, it didn't mean that they didn't treated them well either, but I'm just saying, if I'm a soldier, I probably don't want to be a Soviet one. Okay? But as far as everything else, they're both evil as shit. As a Soviet person, you probably were, there were equal opportunity, a lot more than the Germans, obviously, but they were both evil as fuck, so that's why Eastern Front, which bad guy you want to play, and of course, the real people, they're just soldiers and they're stuck in the whole thing, but I mean, just mean from a gaming aspect, which bad guy you want to be. But it's a good thing the Germans didn't win, because the world would not be a better place by any stretch of the imagination. Something that can't be refuted by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, you're looking at it as a kid, and you don't look at that aspect, because to me it's like, okay, white people fighting white people. Okay, well, it can't be about race, because they're both white people, That's just me looking at it as a kid, and it's like, that's actually not true. That's why that whole none of that stuff makes sense to you, because it's not something that makes sense. It's illogical. But I'm not into the political aspect of it. It's just something I don't... Like, I would never read a book by Eisenhower. It's just too high level. That's not something that I get to experience a war game with. Like, I want to read about something that's like, oh, that's cool. Let me try that in the next game, right? So we're looking at, company level stuff and that kind of thing. Next time I have a, an M10 tank destroyer, I'm going to try, this, that, or the other. That's the kind of stuff I want to read. So I guess the point is, just be willing as you read things to maybe change your opinion about things that you thought maybe you knew all the way. Because there's always new information coming, But there's a lot of people out there that don't want to do that. They have this crusade, and they only want to read about things that reinforce the opinion they already have. And the hell with everything else, And that's a hell of a way to go through life. And of course, the internet just makes those people be able to find more like-minded people like them, which keeps them, which just keeps perpetuating that whole thing. See, there's one bush on each side. Let's put another one on this side. Hell with it. Let's live a little. Gotta have a Nazi tank running over happy little trees. Just like the bastards. Little trees, little bushes. Okay. This thing's done. Did we do Stookie? We did. Oh, where's she over there? Okay. Now we got the big bad boy. That's the other thing you think of is the Russians had some stuff that really could deal with the German stuff. But they had problems like This 122 millimeter gun is a hell of a freaking gun. But they didn't have a lot of rounds in there and it had a slow rate of fire. But this vehicle had a shitload of armor, you know. They made 2,000 or 3,000 of these. But the Soviet stuff's really interesting. But if you're going to paint it all green and not give it any personality, of course you're going to find it boring, you know? But, not every Soviet vehicle is interesting. Not every German vehicle is interesting. The problem is there are just so many more photographs, inspiration, so to speak, of the German stuff. I was going to do some of my Shermans when I was going to do them. The 2nd Armor Division in Normandy. The problem with the Sherman is generally they don't have any camouflage. If they're in the U.S. forces, but the Brits have this habit, or I say they have this habit of taking everything that is what is given to them or sold to them that's American fare and making it look better. Okay, whether it's Shermans in the desert, or Italy, or even Northwest Europe, they add some kind of camouflage which gives it personality. Their symbols. Their regiment symbols on their fenders and stuff like that are just as interesting as the British, just as interesting as the German symbols. They have a lot of that. As a modeler, the British stuff is very interesting. Whereas the American stuff, of course, this has nothing to do with the veterans who don't really have any effect on this. The American Armor Division units, I don't know if they could have made them any worse. It's literally, they're all the same. They have that, the yellow, that triangle with the yellow, the red, and the blue. And, there might be like a number in there. And that's like the only difference. Like, now, the American Infantry Divisions are okay, but the American Armor Divisions, whoever designed that should have been fired, I'm sure there's some practicality behind it, whatever. But as a modeler, it sucks, But there are some American units you can paint pretty interesting. Tunisian area, they can be kind of interesting. I like the yellow markings. I think it works. And in Normandy, there was a unit, the 2nd Armor Division, I believed had quite a few of their Shermans with some camouflage, which is actually black. It might end up being faded black by the time it gets on the tank and, covered in dust and stuff like that, but black. So I'm like, cool, I'll do my Shermans as 2nd Armor Division to give them some extra personality. The problem with that is, for the camouflage to work, you can't have visible stars. If you don't have visible stars, you have a big green tank that has a overspray of a black camouflage scheme, and that's it on it. So it's boring. So you added in one area and took it away from it. So I could have just added the white stars on top of it, but I just figured, let's go olive drab and just give them some personality from the accoutrement that they added onto the vehicles, different packs, and the whole gypsy caravan look that the Allied vehicles were very known for having. But I wanted to do some of that camouflage for the U.S. tanks, but kind of got disappointed that they didn't have a big white aiming spot on the side of the tank that would disrupt their camouflage. It makes sense, but again, from the modeler's aspect, I want to paint things that are interesting and don't look like I just, okay, we're done, give them some personality, if you went back in time and had the real vehicles, they would all have personality. Just like if you watch Fury, and they had that one scene where they had 4 tanks and they were charging across that field at the Pac 40. Every one of them was different, I tried watching that movie again, and I thought it was absolute garbage. The storyline, and I didn't care for it at all. All the special effects that they did were pretty cool. With, like I said, they made all the Sherman big personality and stuff like that. The wrecks at the beginning, where they made an effort to make the wrecks that were kind of silhouetted there in the background. You could pick out what vehicles they were. They weren't just generic tanks, So they did spend some effort in that. The Russian movies, even though they are extreme propaganda films, do a pretty good job of representing at least some of the lines of some of the German kit. And I find value in that. Panfilov's 28. Panfilov's 28 didn't care about the story, didn't care about what happened to any of the Soviet people. Go watch that scene where they're trying to stop all those Panzer IVs. I don't know what they use for those Panzer IVs, but they look good enough the part. They look 90% of Panzer IV. And that means a lot in my book, you know. The special effects they did in that T-34 movie. The story of the T-34 movie is total junk garbage, you know. But the special effects are incredible, you know. So I don't mind. I'm not going to learn my history from a movie. It's just kind of going to go, and I'll read about something else and try to put my own more realistic spin on it. But Mickey Mouse. Oh, Mickey Mouse looks sexy. It really does. It really, really does. Now, I don't like that business that they did with the Firefly, where they would take half of the barrel at the end, and they would paint half of it white or almost white, and the other one leave it in the OD. I don't really care for that, you know. But yeah, the Mickey Mouse looks good. Those British trucks, the Mickey Mouse. I'm telling you, the Brits doctored this stuff. The British stuff in the desert, man, that stuff's sexy. I don't care if their tanks broke down all the time. Putting pendants and stuff on it, the counter scheme, all that stuff. That's some sexy stuff. But if I did 1944 Brits, and I have a lot of infantry to do to paint for 1944 Brits, I think I'm going to do Italy. Because Italy's kind of forgotten. Italy's mostly an infantry battle. You know, skirmish games tend to be infantry anyways. And it's just kind of forgotten, you know. It's not something that most people think of. So all right. Yeah, Mickey Mouse looked good. Now, I don't know if the Mickey Mouse was done however you wanted, or it followed a certain pattern. Because if it followed a certain pattern, my interest level in it will drop. Like, for instance, I don't care for American Navy stuff. And I'm just saying, for the part of gaming, it's not like I'm being anti-American Navy. I'm just saying that from an interest in building things that are interesting, and gaming things that are interesting, or at least that both sides kind of have an even matchup. Stuff in 1944 in the Pacific is just not interesting to me. It's like, you know, the Americans are going to win. It's just a matter of how many casualties they take. But all the ships by that point, they all had that, I want to say it's measure 32 or some variation, or it's very common. Measure 32 looks sexy as hell, okay? But I think every measure 32 ship looked the same. And what I'm saying is, if you see a Fletcher-class destroyer, square bridge Fletcher-class destroyer, in measure 32, and this color is here on the hull, and it tapers into this color, and this one, I believe every Fletcher-class destroyer of that class in that scheme has the same lines in the same place, or at least that's the intent of it. That's not as interesting, you know, because I want everything to have its own personality. You know, is it practical? Probably not. The way they did it is more practical, but I don't care about being practical. I'm building models, and I want them to be interesting, you know. And I want there to be a reason to build another one. And if they're all the same paint scheme, like, why should I build more than one of them, you know? You remember the Airfix box art for their Matilda had a blue and a camo scheme. To me as a kid, that looked so cool. Yeah, and I believe a couple of the museums have that, and that is now no longer the accepted color that was. Now, with that said, what the accepted color is just as cool, but it's not light blue. But yeah, growing up, I know exactly what you're talking about. It does look really cool. Oh, I like me some Matildas. That's a sexy slow beast. Not a Valentine fan. I'm sorry, Valentine's a poor man's Matilda. But yeah, things change. That was the counter scheme, and from what I understand is after Crusader, after the battles of Crusader in November of 1941, the counter scheme was no longer used. So they used it from the beginning of the war when just the Italians were in the desert, all the way through Crusader. So you learn little bits and things as you learn, and as you go along on this hobby and journey. I sometimes remember them and sometimes regurgitate them back to you guys, but yeah, yeah, I like them. I like Matildas. And I love Crusader. I love all the cruiser tanks. I love all the cruiser tanks. I'm not a fan of the Cromwell. I'm just not a fan of. There's just something so elegant about. And you got the time period like Alamein. Alamein, there's so many different weapon systems that the British have. And I know it's not practical. It doesn't matter. They got Grants. They got, they had some Churchills. Shermans in all kinds of fun schemes. Crusader 3s. The interesting thing about the Crusader 3 that blows my mind, this really blows my mind, is that generally, if you take the Soviet example, okay, you take a T-34, four-man tank, two men in the turret. Eventually, it gets changed to T-30-45. They add a third man, right? It becomes more efficient, a better weapon of war from an efficiency standpoint. The Crusader kind of went backwards, and maybe it wasn't that it was so efficient, but on at first glance, it's kind of unusual that the Crusader 1 went from having a machine gun turret to eliminating that, and but if it didn't work and it jammed all the time, they didn't use it. But when they went to put the 6-pounder in it, the 6-pounder, the breach of the gun was in the turret so much, and that's one of the things is if you look at it, a British 6-pounder and a US 57 millimeter gun. There's a very long caliber guns, meaning they're very long lengthwise, proportion to their diameter. Both of them. I believe if they're not identical guns, they're nearly identical guns. If you look at the anti-tank gun, the barrel is really, really long. If you look at it in the tank, in a Crusader 3, for instance, it's not as long because more of the barrel is inside of the tank, which takes up more space. So the Crusader 3-man turret gets reduced to a 2-man turret when the 6-pounder gun gets put in. And the commander of the British tank has the unusual role of being the loader. Normally when it's a 2-man turret, when it's a 1-man turret, the commander is the commander, the gunner, and the loader. When it's a 2-man turret, almost always the commander is also the gunner. That's the case in the Panzer II. That is the case in the T-34. That is the case in several other examples that I can't think of right now. The Czech 38 tank, the Panzer 38, I should say. It's generally the role. In the Crusader, he was, for whatever reason, he was the loader. I don't know why. I haven't looked into it, but that's kind of unusual. But so much of the gun was inside of the turret, and it's probably for counterbalance purposes. And stick it way out there, and there's not enough reach behind it. It's constantly drooping down, kind of thing. To kind of keep all that in balance. There's lots of things that get into play that you don't necessarily see them on a war games table. A lot of the British tanks that had a 2-pounder gun, they would have traverse, but the up and down of the actual gun was a harness that the gunner wore. so to speak. So he would have to aim the whole gun with his body, which would really wear a person down, I would think. And you better unstrap from that thing, I think, when you're running, or you're gonna be, it's gonna be bad. But that's kind of, just stuff that's in the workings there that you don't necessarily see. Certainly, if you're playing a more zoomed out game like Command Decision or that kind of thing, you're not gonna see those kind of effects come into play so much. But there's so much information on World War II stuff that wasn't around 30 years ago. I'm just fascinated about learning stuff that I didn't know. When I left World War II 20 years ago, I was tired of reading things that there wasn't anything worth reading that was out there, for my level of the stuff that I'm interested in. And now there's just like so much. There's a lot of wrong information too. You got to be careful, but and I think you can be safe on the internet. You go on there and you see 10 different you see 10 different things. Well, which one seems to be consistently saying the same thing? But I remember when I did World War II many years ago, I was always complaining like, man, I wish there was a picture of this in color. And then you go and do Ancients for 20 years, and you're like, man, I wish there was any knowledge of this civilization at all. I mean, it just kind of puts everything in perspective that we may not know a lot about there may be a lot of loopholes we have in World War II stuff, but it is really complete compared to other periods of time. So well, I'm not a historian. I'm not going to go out there and let's prove what somebody wrote. I'm just going to take it at face value. Okay, well, this might be what it is, But sometimes, your opinions of things change because as news research or whatever comes by, I just assume that somebody's not trying to push an agenda. That's always my assumption is on news as well. Just tell me the news. I'm a big boy. I pay taxes. I can figure out what it means. Don't tell me what it means. Just tell me the news. And apparently that's not the world that we live in. Well, we certainly don't live in that world now, and we may have never lived in it. But the perception growing up was that the news was just the news. It's like a fact. This is what it is. The temperature is this. Go and check the thermometer. Oh, it is 73. Oh, it must be 73, Because the stuff that we grew up in, there was all the German generals, reports and stuff. And it's just garbage. I mean, there's some truth in there, but there's a lot of self-serving garbage. That there's one guy's memoirs I got really excited about reading about him, and I just stopped reading them. There's this one guy named Erhard Raus, okay? And he was the commander of many things, but what he's the most known for, he's the commander of the 6th Panzer Division on the Eastern Front. So he's one of these commanders that's the commander of the 6th Panzer Division when he encounters a KV that blocks everything and is all kinds of problems. And he goes to the rescue of the Wintergewitter and Stalingrad and stuff like that. So he's in areas that I find particularly interested. But you start reading his memoirs, and it's like this guy was either Superman or he's full of shit. So which one is it? It's like if they would have just cloned him, the Germans would have been unstoppable, no matter if they didn't produce anything. And it's that just way over the top, he was just so in love with himself that it's just you can't read it, I just find it extremely difficult to get through it, So that's okay. There we go. All right, so I think we got everybody here. Based. Oh, well, this one was already done. I don't know if that helped you with the whole Stug Panzer III type of thing, but ask me anything you want. I'll tell you to the best of my knowledge at the time. And just take it for a grain of salt. It's a little stepping block that maybe you can read more about it, and at least you have some core principles down to learn from, Here they are. And it's funny how the colors kind of affect everything, because These three, actually these four, are all painted the same base color yellow. This one looks a lot greener because there's only green on there. These other ones, well, this one's only has brown on it, no green. But not having the brown kind of makes it look more lime green colored, so to speak, if that makes any sense. Maybe it's just an optical delusion, but I don't know where this leaves us off at as far as numbers of vehicles completed. I know we're in the 70s. So these guys are done. So now we get to go on to something else. And I'm trying to mix it up, do some Soviet stuff, do some German stuff. You know, so it's not like, oh, Tony's doing German tanks good, just like everybody else. Look, everybody's stuff is interesting. Even the Italians. I just don't want to get in that theater just yet. I think I'm going to enjoy it way too freaking much. So it's coming. We will get to North Africa. Okay. These are the vehicles I airbrushed the other day on the base color. And we gave them the Agrax Earthshade wash. Heavy wash. And we had to rebuild the barrel on this Panther because it had all kinds of issues with it. All kinds of issues with it. It broke on me. I'm gonna leave it facing down a little bit. It was a problem. It was glued, and it was glued without, you know, the muzzle brake. The holes in the side of the muzzle brake should be perpendicular to the barrel, and they had glued it almost like at a 45-degree angle. I'm like, I can't have a Panther with a 45-degree angle barrel, and I also can't buy a replacement barrel that costs more than a new tank does. That's just stupid, you know. And it's a vehicle that it's an old. I believe this is an old Airfix kit. It's missing all kinds of stuff on there. So I'm going to take a little potty break since I drink a lot of stuff. We'll be right back in a moment, and we'll hop on these guys. Okay. So these just have. Oh, don't tell me I still have that color. No, I brought it inside, didn't I? Yeah, the Dunkelgelb base for MiG. And as you can see, you get this color, and it is not an attractive color. But after you highlight it and stuff, it ends up looking about where it needs to be. So we're going to dry brush this same color back on them, and then we will do the camouflage with the spray. Okay? But we're going to do this first. And obviously we can't spray on camera, so we'll have to come back to that. I did not like these paints at the beginning, but the more I use them, the more I like them. This is a Britannia Panther. This guy is a die cast from a company called Altaya, I believe. And this, I believe, is the Airfix Panther, and this barrel is really droopy. Like really, really droopy so. I'm gonna end up breaking this bastard, aren't I? Well, I ended up buying this for $1, so I can't complain too much. All right, let's get some of this stuff on here. Make sure we don't have any static grass around here. Makes life more difficult having that around. All right, let's get a dry brush on here. Not something that's massive, but as I like to say, let's see what brush we're going to ruin. Yeah, the Brits have this habit of making everything American look better. The Kitty Hawk. Kitty Hawk had some awesome paint schemes. Well, I'm a fan of the P40 anyways. I'm a fan of the P40. Just about everything looks better with a tiger shark mouth on it. Honeys? How could I have forgotten about honeys? I love honeys. Honeys are awesome. Just break this into pieces. And this is just to kind of have like a base layer. And then we'll camouflage on top of this. And then we dry brush this on top of it to soften the camouflage. If it's a camouflage that needs softening, because there are some hard edge camouflages. I'll be honest with you, most of the time, there's that saying again, it doesn't look right to me. To my eye, it does not look right. And there is some ugly German camouflage stuff. Not everything that the Germans painted looks good. Sometimes it's like, man, this guy was on some drugs. And this is missing half of a road wheel, so this one will end up having a bush that goes there. No, I got these from an estate sale from a gentleman that passed away at the last show. Actually, there was 2 estate sales at that last show from 2 gentlemen that passed away. This is an older gentleman. I didn't know the other one. This one, I think I played a game with him, but I didn't personally know him. But let's put these things to good use. Repaint them and put them up to good use. Okay. You can tell maybe let's see, what am I looking at? Let's put this in a place that, wow, the inside is pretty dark. It looks pretty dark. Well, it kind of needs to be. That area is just going to be filthy. Let's see what you guys will see on film there. And I don't know if it's that noticeable on the camera. The camera can't really pick all that stuff out, but that's what I've been using kind of as my base. I've been really happy with it. No reason really to change it. Change is like what you do when you're bored or don't like the results. And since neither one of those 2 things apply here, we're not going to be changing. That, and you could change and really like much better, and everything you've done beforehand looks like crap, and then you want to start over again. So we certainly don't need to do that. That is self-deprecating for sure. So I don't know if that's a correct word, self-deprecating. That's not useful. That's not the way you move forward, you know. Screwing yourself. I guess everybody enjoyed the lecture. No, but if you got any questions about stuff like that, I don't mind sharing what the little bit of knowledge I've picked up over the years. Maybe it might be something to kind of get your foot in the door and then be able to start reading about more detail in, you know. The Shermans are super complicated. You know, you got cast hole, you got welded hole, you got 60-degree holes, 47 degrees hole, hybrid ones, diesel engines, non-diesel engines, you know. It's just crazy. The ones they sent to the Soviets, you know. I'm not a fan of Soviets with Lend-Lease equipment. The way I look at it is the Soviets produced enough of their own stuff already that I don't need to build Lend-Lease stuff for them. That and the Soviets and Shermans just looks wrong. It just looks so wrong. Give them the Valentines. They like those the most anyways. Probably because they were low, hard to hit. And Valentines actually had decent armor. You know. What I didn't know is they had a very similar suspension like the A9 and the A10. I don't know if it was exactly the same, but it was certainly the same type of running gear. And when I read that, I'm like, oh. I went and looked at, well, I'll be damned. It's like they do. You know? And I hadn't noticed because I've never built either one of them. I've never built an A9 or an A10, nor a Valentine. Yet. Got to throw that yet in there. There's only half of a road wheel up here too. So we're just going to leave that road wheel off, which is fine. They just used it. And we're still one short because that one blew out on them, but we're going to cover that up. Although it certainly could do its job of missing that one road wheel, but it just kind of looks wrong. So I'd rather not do those things that automatically look wrong. So what we're going to do is we're going to be done for this morning once we're done base coating these vehicles, because the next step is going to be camouflage. I might actually decide to do something crazy, and I haven't tried it out yet. But this is a Panzer IIIL. I've got 5 of them. None of them have any shirts in. And they did use them for a little bit in 1942. And then some of them survived until Kursk, where I've seen pictures of them with the shirts in on the side of the turret. Now, this particular tank did not come with any shirts in on the side of the turret. But my Panzer III that I did build from Eschi, I built as a Flammpanzer. And Flammpanzers don't really have shirts in on the turret at all. So I got an extra set of shirts in, so I may put shirts in on the side of this turret, just add them to it afterwards and just see what it looks like. Just, you know, to make them all kind of look different. But this one's going to have 3 color camouflage on it. I'm pretty sure all 3 of these will have all 3 colors. So that's at least what the general plan is at this moment. Apt to change at any time. But I cannot wait to continue my airbrush journey. I am not going to be an exclusive airbrusher. I'm so monly. A brush painter, but we're using the airbrush to base, to prime, to seal, and camouflage in between. But not to weather. It just looks too perfect. And actually, what I find is that 3 feet away, it looks too. It all blends together too well. The details don't pop. I think the dry brush works a lot better for me for the look I'm trying to achieve. Whew. I'm so monly. Me monly long time. You look at Panzer IIIMs. If you're looking at tanks to do for Kursk, you almost always see when the Panzer IIIs get mentioned, it's a Panzer IIIM. They only made 250 Panzer IIIMs, only. And roughly, I said roughly, half of the tank strength in the German Wehrmacht was Panzer IIIs. The other half Panzer IVs, generally. And the Germans had a lot of tanks. So they couldn't have all been 3Ms. You gotta have some L's in there, you gotta have some J's. I already painted an L in Kursk time period livery. So let's maybe try doing one of these with the shirts on the turret, which I've seen illustrations of for Kursk in L's, but they always seem to have shirts on the turret. We'll take a look at that in a few minutes. So this is a starting point for this. And it's kind of rough. But, you know, we haven't highlighted any colors lighter than that. So we basically have an overall yellow, That's got the Agrax Earthshade wash, and then we dry brushed yellow on top of it again. This is kind of the method that I use. It's stolen from different locations. Oh, I've only done one? Oh, geez, I thought I'd gotten farther along. All right, well, we need to pick this up. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of getting that. But I got extra pieces for vehicles. I keep them because you never know when you're going to need them. This is one of those opportunities, I think. Running gear on the Panther. This had to be a nightmare for people to fix. Inner 11 road wheels. What a nightmare. Kind of slow. Well, it means you guys are either enjoying it, not trying to disprove anything I said, which I guess is a good thing, or I put you to sleep, or somewhere in between. Hey, if I give you guys false information, it's because shit happens. You know, I don't want to. I'm not trying to push an agenda. It's just fun to learn, and sometimes, you know, you remember things incorrectly, unfortunately, but and this one is going to have a turret commander in it. We're going to get a guy from a War Games Foundry guy. And we'll put his happy ass in there. I enjoy learning things. I'm just not interested in everything. So, you know, like in college, I took electives. I took history for electives because I figured, you know, it could be something that I'm interested in. And even though I never did any gaming at that time other than World War II, I still had decent knowledge of all the other periods because, you know, I took history. I think it's interesting. Yeah, I never played anything other than World War II until 10 years after I got out of college. So, but I like to read things for the purpose of gaining information. My wife said that. She says, you know, you read, but you read to learn stuff. I don't read for entertainment. I said, well, I do both, but I'm entertained by the stuff that I learn, but it's what I want to learn. It's not the stuff that we had in school. You know, I didn't give a shit about that. I want to just read everything. But this method, you can do it with whatever tools you got. I mean, it's pretty low requirements. Everybody likes Panthers. First 1/35th scale model I built was a Panther. Just like how it looks. Me likey, me likey. And just so you guys know, you may not know this if you don't make your own YouTube content, I can tell how many people are viewing. Whether or not it's accurate, I think it's might be off by 25%, but I can't tell who they are. So if you're wondering, man, I've been watching Tony a long time, but he never says anything to you. I don't know who you are. You know, and if you want to just lurk, that's fine too. I don't mind lurking. I lurk sometimes. It's usually on stuff I shouldn't be watching, but hopefully this is not something you shouldn't be watching. You know, there's some units that had some pretty unique camouflage schemes. I don't paint SS units, but the SS Viking, 5th SS Panzer Division, they had Panthers that had almost splinter camouflage, hard lines and stuff on it. Now, this should be a good base to airbrush on top of after this, you know? Harvey Gurn, welcome. You're watching. There you go. Well, I don't know if you guys know that. Like, I didn't know that originally. Like, why isn't... I've been watching here for 20 minutes. Why doesn't Tony say anything? I didn't know who you are. I mean, I wish there was a... Actually, I wish there was a way you could disable that if you wanted to. But, you know, maybe you don't mind, you know, me knowing that you're watching. Oh, you know, I'm friendly. I'm not friendly to anybody, but I'm certainly friendly to people that have a shared interest. You know? Yeah, I got no way of seeing who it is, you know. You guys could all be Chinese spies for all I know. Probably. Wondering when I'm going to say something anti-Chinese. I'm not anti-Chinese, I'm anti-communist. I'm anti-dictators. I got nothing against the Chinese. I love their history. Their military history is really interesting. I'm no Hitler. He fights wars on race. Ow! What is that? Holy shit! What is that? Holy crap! That's a hard. Good lord, that's hard. That feels like an X-Acto knife. The end of this brush. Oh, you're gonna get some treatment now. Assuming I can solve it. Whoa! If it's paint, this will take it off. Well, it's not hard like that anymore. Now, let's scoop this stuff up. I got a friend of mine, I mentioned this before. He hated anything French. He didn't know any French people. Like, there's good people everywhere, you know? And you don't judge them by a government you may or may not like. And some people are just somewhere because that's where they're trapped, and they'd love to leave, but they can't. Like all the folks that are trapped in Hong Kong. I'm thinking they're trapped, I don't know. A lot of war gamers in Hong Kong, no doubt due to the British influence. That's the land of toys and the birth of wargaming. Our English cousins. Well, not literally, not for me. You guys have too much fun with me in jolly old England if I lived there. And you know it. Uh-oh, what happened here? Now this poor thing is almost devoid of a lot of detail. I don't know if I'm going to add stuff to it. I don't want to cogitate on that too much because what happens is then I don't get all these kits done. And it's not that I want to do a shitty job painting it, but it's kind of the law of diminishing returns. At some point, you just got to be happy with what you have and just move forward with it, I mean, I'm sure somebody makes some stuff that brings this model back up to standard, but I bought this for $1. Okay, it's missing mufflers. It's got broke stuff on it. That's how I got it. Let's just move forward with it, make the best we can with it. And I did take pictures of it before, and it will look infinitely better than when I got it. I will guarantee you that. You may not even recognize it as the model that it was. And if I can do that, then I have succeeded. I believe this is I think this is the Airfix and not the Matchbox one. And the only reason I'm saying that is because with Matchbox it would be multiple colors, and this was in one color. And this is not a model that I built as a kid. As I mentioned before, growing up in the 80s in the United States, there was no Airfix kits here. There was no kits in the store that I ever saw here in my part in Florida in the 1980s that was called Airfix. It was all MPC. And I don't remember what the hell it stands for. Model Products Company or something like that. So they had subbed all of that stuff out. Airfix model. Now, you look at the bottom and it'd say Airfix, UK or whatever. But it was MPC branded stuff. And I built lots of stuff. I built a lot of Airfix stuff that was modeled as MPC growing up. Ships, I had the Bismarck, I had the Graf Spee, Prinz Eugen, Hood. No, Hood didn't make a Hood. Exeter? Leander? Maybe it was Leander. Lark Royal. Repulse. The Repulse. Beautiful ship, the Repulse. Sad end. Yeah, another thing I found out. Repulse is about 750 feet long, right? It's in like 300 feet of water or something like that. So if you stood it on end, half the ship would be sticking out of the water. That's how shallow it is. I had no idea. I had no idea it was in shallow water that shallow. And I believe they've stripped a lot of stuff off of it, and her in Prince of Wales. They've salvaged a lot of, illegally salvaged stuff. I don't know if it's illegal, but they don't normally disturb a war grave. What else did I build that was MPC? All my little Airfix figures, they're all branded as MPC stuff. The German Recon set. No, that's not true. I bought that after it was already Airfix. But, I had a Stuka and a Spitfire and an ME-109 and a Focke-Wulf and, God, I want to say I had a Typhoon. I want to say I had a Typhoon. But they were all MPC branded. Which honestly had better box art. The MPC box art was just really... you remember, you have no color pictures back then. So there's your inspiration for building stuff. This machine gun mount has things the real one does not have. And I got this big ass scratch right here. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave that scratch there. We'll work that in something. And we got some sloppy glue. This was not done well. Well, I could have done this as well, as a kid. Well, we're going to make the most of this thing. I've already gotten my dollar's worth out of it. The Airfix Panther has an issue with the suspension. Specifically, there's no gap between the top of the road wheels and the chassis. Okay. Well, the issue it had... Is this the Airfix one? It's a G. I wish it wasn't. All my Panthers are Gs. Which the only problem with it is if I want to do something in like early 44 or something like that, these are all the wrong tank, but I'm not going to cogitate on that too much. I actually like the look of the G better because it doesn't have that whole, hello, Who is it? Sir Bedivere, every time he talks, he raises his little thing. Like the T-34, catch a shell right in there in the face, and the driver takes it in the face, I like this better without that stupid thing, but, the A's were around longer, so it makes more sense to have the A's, Yeah, this is an Airfix or a Matchbox one. It's 1/76. I know that much. It's a little on the short side. It seems like the sides of it, if I remember correctly, I could be wrong. Hey, isn't that kind of the default? If I don't remember correctly, I am wrong. The sides of let's see if I can get it head on. The slope of the sides on a G, I think, were more vertical than an A. Am I right? I don't know. I think that's the case. It's a Panther. And the people playing it won't give a shit. Well, unless I'm soloing it, then I do. But, like I said, I paid $1 for it. What's that? Less than a quid. Right? And I wouldn't buy this new because it's 176. I prefer 172nd. The only 176 scale stuff I would still buy, if it's available, is Cromwell models. Cromwell model stuff is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful. And the fact that this is sloppyish to some degree, it won't matter. By the time you put the other layers on there, it just adds to the color of it being not very thick. The other thing is that AK paints are very thin, so sometimes when you dry brush things, they kind of, you add thickness to it, and these would add less thickness than other ones. That's a good question. Do I dislike Zimmerant more or Schertzen? Probably Zimmerant. Because Zimmerant looks good sometimes, and most of the time it does not look good. The Zimmerant on the Panthers, for instance, was a different style. It was all squares. So, it just looks childish. Especially when it was done for... The Germans did a couple things that didn't make any sense. But, last time I left World War II, 20 years ago, the Schertzen was, for bazookas and stuff like that. Now apparently the word on the street is, or it's been on the word on the street, that that it was really for anti-tank rifles. They just add another level of armor that they need to go with, because the Russians had tons of anti-tank rifles and really no bazookas or anything. I mean, the Allies did give them some, but they were rare by Eastern Front standards. They were rare. They didn't have them everywhere. They weren't very common at all. I don't know that I've ever seen a picture of a Soviet soldier with a bazooka. But, the side of panzers, whether they're 3s or 4s, is never more than 30 millimeters. In the tank form. And it's vertical. It's not sloped or anything. So adding an extra 10, 15 mil of Schertzen to help slow down that 14.5 millimeter gun, for 14.5 millimeter anti-tank rifle, so that it doesn't create a problem on the side to the crew, really. Looks like Matchbox Panther G. It has added armor under the mantlet. Yes, this has a very thin chin. Yes. So that's a late G. This one is an early G. Doesn't have it. And the Hasegawa one is also has chin armor. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing the G Panther has, I believe the other ones do not have it. Don't quote me. Is the German tanks late war have this thing that starts with an N, has about 30 letters in it, and it's basically a close combat grenade launcher. I don't even know how to spell Waffe something, So if you look up German close defense mortar, and no, I'm not talking about the Karl Garat. In roof. Here it is. Verteidigungswaffe. Son of a biscuit eater. Okay. Nahverteidigungs Waffe. Nahverteidigungswaffe. I can't do it. I can't say it fast enough. Well, it's not my fault. I speak 2 languages, so the hell with it. The hell with the third. And this isn't in my Blitzkrieg German. Sorry. Nahverteidigungswaffe. Whoa! Roof-mounted, breech-loaded, single-shot, multi-purpose, 360-degree. The Germans just over-engineered the shit out of everything. Now, to be honest with you, if I'm inside a German tank, I want one of these, okay? 360-degree rotating grenade launcher that could fire a variety of ammunition. It was typically found on German tanks such as the Panzer IV. The J may have one. I don't think the H has one. Panzer IV, Panther, Tiger II from 1944 until the end of the war was intended to replace 3 previous devices. The Nebelwurfgerät, the Meingunst, and pistol ports, yeah. It's basically a grenade launcher that fires a shotgun round that rains hell on anybody within really close range of the tank. It's like, they're clambering on our tank. Oh, give them one of these. Yeah. Anyhow, I'll have to look at my 4J and see if it's got one on there. But it could. My 4J is a very old model, so it could not be. Okay. How do I pronounce it? Not. Okay. It's not a Spa-Wagen. It's a Spa-Wagen. So, okay, so that's nay, right? Nay Vertigungs. Na Vertigungswaffe. Na Vertigungswaffe. How did I do? And the correct answer for that is great for an American. And you know that's the truth. Because there's lots of people in this country that are just, I want to pronounce things right, okay? Because, my people come from somewhere else. And I appreciate that, Let's check out the pencil 4J. Nee, Vertigungswaffe. Nee, I need to write it down here phonetically how you say it. I'm probably always going to end up saying Spa-Wagen, unfortunately. I just did it too many times. Is it this? I don't know that it is that one. Well, it's not like I'm going to modify it or anything. This is an old Fujimi kit. This thing actually has pretty decent detail, except for the MG34 and the cupola. It's sucky shape. I wish I hadn't glued this thing shut. I wish I hadn't glued this cupola shut. Dare I bend myself over? Thank you, Jesus. Okay, now I got the option of building with the turret open. And I like putting a figure in there because it gives a sense of scale, It's an opportunity to paint a figure, and I happen to like painting figures. I really do. Oh, that's tomato. No, not this motto crap. I've said this before, I prefer English spelling, but American pronunciation on just about everything. I do like armor needs to have a U in it. It looks right. It looks right with a U. And it's funny because I'll type things, micro armor or whatever, and it'll correct me. That's not how you spell that. I like gray with an E. I do. It looks better. Okay. Yeah, I'm not your typical American. I am about some things, but I got a last name I got to mispronounce for the people in this continent, Okay, let's give this thing some support so I can lay it on here, not bend the shit out of this barrel. This thing won't last. It's Airfix, okay? Because there's a 15 here, and it's at that Airfix angle. You know how things are written, it says Airfix or whatever? It's the gentleman who had this actually put a piece of cardboard back here that said what this is. Archaeology. could have just gone on. I could have just gone on. What's that place called? Missing Link, not Missing Link. Scalemates. Man, that's a great site. Hank of Holland, I think, is still down. Another great site. It doesn't say freaking Airfix on here. If it doesn't say anything, it doesn't say anything on here. Sons of biscuit eaters. Well, I don't know who the hell makes this thing. This is where Tony finds smuggled coke. You know, if I had to do drugs, no, I'm not going to go there. If I had to do drugs, I want to do drugs where I get more shit done that I like, not less. Okay? So I'd never be a pothead. That's all I'm saying. The thing that I say, I want to do the drugs where I throw the car on my back and run home with it and get home faster than if I drove in it. Yeah, that's the shit you want to do. I want to be productive. I got all the German tanks painted last night. Really? All the ones you have? No, a 1-for-1 scale. Every one of them that was used in the Second World War. Oh, one night. I've never even seen anybody do cocaine. Nor do I want to. Nor do I want to. Well, the other alternative is, and this is a long step thing, I'd have to drill this thing out, put a pin in there, drill it in the other one, so then you got a stiffener that's in there, and then you can glue it in place. But man, it's a lot of work for this piece of shit little model that's not the best, and it's what I'm going to have to do, isn't it? I think what I'm going to have to do on this thing. All right, well, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. That's a rabbit hole. But it's a rabbit hole I can handle now. I wouldn't be able to handle that as a kid. But I don't want to solve this thing. Just like I would have replaced, see, this thing's actually loose. This sprocket wheel's broken. But this thing came sealed, so I don't want to break it open to drill a pin through there and pin it through both parts, which what I've done with a couple of German half-tracks. And it worked fine. It's like, oh, you're going to give me trouble like that? Well, screw you. We'll fix you. So, anyhow, we're just going to move this back. I do Coke. It's just Coke Zero. It's true story. I do like my Coke Zero. It's going to be the end of me. Oh well. Everybody has some addiction. That's not a bad one. I mean, as far as addictions go, that's a pretty good one. Because they're all terrible. Okay, so this is where these guys are. I'm going to have to do that with a barrel, aren't I? I'm going to end up having to do that with a barrel. Is this stuff strong enough for me to find something more? It's too bendy. I want to use steel. Heavy metal. All right, let's do it. Maybe somebody will watch this and be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, look, it even broke off on its own. No problem. This is the stuff that I can handle now because I learned this stuff from some people on the internet. And, more importantly, I have tools to do it with. When you're a 19-year-old kid, you don't have all this stuff. And the sooner you buy your tools, the longer you can go through life and use them. Now, where is my bag? Here we go. My bag from Joann Fabrics, which has all my needles and stuff. I'm going to go ahead and grab one that's already... Jeez. This is like a pit of vipers. They do sell replacement barrels, but they cost more than a new tank, which doesn't make any sense. I actually have a Panther, and I'm going to show it to you in a second so you can see what I'm talking about. We've got a pin. It's already bent. No problem. That's what we're going to put in the barrel. I'm going to show you this Panther while I'm thinking about it. I think it's not out. There's a vendor who used to come to our shows called BP Cast. He's a one-shot guy. You guys might have seen this stuff on the internet. It's not very good quality. I'm sorry. Sorry, Tom. And but I don't think he's in business anymore. But he used to come to our shows, and back when I was addicted to buying things because it was there, and then didn't do anything with it, I bought one of these. And it's full of resin bubbles. I don't know exactly how he made these, but it's full of resin bubbles. And somewhere along the way, it had a white metal barrel. And somewhere along the way, I lost it. And I don't want to buy a barrel for a crummy Panther, because it is a crummy model Panther. And I'll show you in a second. It would probably paint up okay. I mean, it would certainly look good as a burnt wreck. But honestly, wrecks probably take more work to do than just building a brand new tank. Or you know, a tank that's undamaged. And I'll show you what I mean by that. But I don't have a barrel for this tank. So I did look into getting another barrel. I thought about, when I got this particular Panther I'm working on right now with the broken barrel, to just use this barrel for this one. But then I took a close look at this tank and go, you know what? This really isn't worth the effort that it's going to take to make this serviceable. And I'll zoom in so you guys can see. And this is a Panther A. I do have a Panther A. Let's do the zoomification here. All its warts and all of its warts, okay? But it has some things that I actually like about it. But it has a lot of things I don't like about it. Holy transom light 30. Let there be light. So, you know, the one side is just totally, it's resin. And here on the running wheel, on the running gear, man, that's clear. I can handle some of the stuff having bubbles and stuff because you're going to weather it, and you know, it's going to look you know, worn, and there's going to be gunk and stuff in there. So this running gear looks just fine. You know, this will actually paint up okay. And same thing with the other side. There's some bubbles here, for instance, by the sprocket wheel. You know, no big deal. Could probably clean that up. It'd probably work. You look at the rest of this thing, and you got some things that, you know, when you're dealing with a vehicle that has a lot of sharp edges, if you have things that aren't sharp, you know, you kind of have to repair them, or it's not going to look a whole lot like the real vehicle. And I'll point some of these things out. And I'd probably it's still fixable, but man, it's going to take a lot of sweat. It's going to take a lot of sweat equity. Okay, you got some bubbles in here by the stuff that need to be fixed. You got some fuel. I mean, it's got some nice like custom detail to it. You got some jerry cans here. You got some tarps. You got extra tracks here on the side. But there's like bubbles everywhere, you know. Here's some bubbles right here, you know. You can take them off, that's done. That wasn't too bad. But you know, some places you're gonna have to fill things in, you know, to kind of make it, you know, there's a bubble there. There's one there. I've had this so long, it no longer has a smell. It used to smell like mothballs, which is a horrible smell. But look at the back of the fan. You know, this has bubbles all in it. Now, it may be just as easy as just popping them like so. But then look at the turret up here. All this is like encrusted with and not hollow like it's supposed to be. But regardless, I actually probably would put this to work and it would probably look pretty decent. I don't have a barrel for it though. I mean, I guess I could just put this barrel there. But then I don't have a barrel for this guy. So, you know, I'm short a barrel. I'm short a barrel. And you know what? I may be better off just doing that. I may be better off just... Tell me what you think. Should I drill this out, put this barrel in? Well, will the gun be the right length? Assuming this one's correct. No, it'll be shorter. But, you know, does that really bother me? Not really. I'll have a Panther A. You know, you wouldn't have this ugly thing. Look at the front of that ball mount. It's got like a little top on it that the real tank doesn't have. I don't know what I should do, but I don't want to buy a barrel that costs $20. You know? Because that just doesn't make any sense. That is not a smart decision. Might be less work to use it as a wreck. I don't know. Now I'm looking at it, and the bubbles actually aren't that bad. You know? And there's something really empowering about building something that's not very good and making it look really good. It really is. When I was painting 15s, I loved painting second tier figures because nobody gives a shit about them. And, you know, with a little bit of TLC, they can actually look okay. There's that formaldehyde smell. As soon as I got something fresh, it comes through. I'm going to punt on this. I may actually not build this and build this one with its barrel. I don't have to decide that yet. Oh, we got some natural light. Okay, this is an opportunity that doesn't come out very often. Okay? Let's take a look at some of these. Oh, that would be bad. We do not need to knock down our computer. Oh, really? And you're going to go away? Let's see what these vehicles look like in the natural light. Other than better. You can't see the angle it's from. Anyhow, I gotta take some photos of these guys online. They won't look as washed out and stuff. Anyhow, yeah, so we're going to, oh, now the sun comes back out. Now you're just being a dick. All right, so, yeah, that's the thing is this could get cleaned up. But it's gonna take a little bit of effort. And like I said, somewhere along the way, I lost the metal barrel. You know? Now look at the back. Look at the back of this thing. Like, the hell? It's like it took a round already. And it's got to be a small round because Panthers don't have very much armor on the rear at all. So, you know, you hit a Panther in the rear with a 75 mil. I don't give a shit what kind of 75 mil it is. It's going to have problems. It's going to have definite problems. So, anyhow, to be continued. We will probably punt on this guy. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that barrel conversion and then find out that that I don't have one, then I don't have one for the, okay, I'm not putting the barrel on it. There you go. Sometimes you just got to make a decision. All right, let's do this. See, this is why I say don't make any freaking plans, because... But that's why I didn't buy a barrel. It costs more than another tank. You know? Oh, we got this little guy to work on too. Lukey. The Lukes. All right, where is this one? And where is the pin vise with the larger one? It's right here. The problem is I have so many similar tools that we're going to need that, probably. Here's the pin vise. Drill bit box. Doing this kind of stuff is really empowering. So if you guys haven't done it, I recommend you do it. I find it quite enjoyable now that we have access to these stuff. All right, I don't want to cut this barrel down any more than I have to. So let's just kind of go through with that. We need to get a pilot hole. Let's put this on something. Find the center. Put something there, you can get some purchase. Might as well drill out with a small one first. Okay, that's relatively centered. Let's do the same thing with this side. No, let's follow the same process, moron. And now let's expand this. I like these tweezers that have the little teeth on them. Had that sitting in my drawer at work for probably 10 years. How much fun I could have had with it the whole time. Whoa, that went far in. Okay. We're going to go in way deep in this end. And let's see if this is big enough for this pin. Which right now at the end is bent, but yeah, it fits in there just fine. Okay, perfect. Well, I could just cut it off here and we'd have enough, but I feel like I need to have it go in there deeper than that. Don't roll onto the top of my foot, please. I'm not wearing safety shoes in the house. Sorry, it's a little too extreme. Now, let's grab my clippers that are older than I am, because they were my dad's. Move this stuff out of the way. let's just forget the bent part. And I'm going to do this over the wastebasket, and I'm going to close my eyes. It's all the way inside the wastebasket. And let's see how deep this can go in here. Shit, this is so tight a fit, I may not even need glue. Hot tamale. All right. I'm not even gonna glue it. F it. Hey, then I can replace the barrel. I can use it for whichever panther I need. Do the same thing on the other one. Stop. And we're gonna clip the other side. That is a thought, actually. Oh man. Okay. Let's drill this thing out a little bit more. This is really easy to do if you got all this pin vices and stuff. And when I first started modeling in the early 90s, I had this stuff. This stuff costs money. I barely have enough money to scrape by to buy a model. Why would I buy like stuff that I'm not going to use? Look at this shit. Now, if you look close, there's nothing I can do about this because the person that glued it. But it's gonna work. It's gonna work. All right, good. Like I said, it cost $1. Yeah, because I could. Oh shit! Yes, I went down a slippery slope. This one actually has a guide on there, so. God, this stuff stinks. I hope this doesn't cause cancer. I like how I say I'm not going to do something and I still do it. You know, it is fun to do this, so I got nothing to lose. Remove for depending on which panther you're going to use. All right. Well, now I got to clean this thing up and spray paint her. Sorry, went down the slippery slope. Oh man. Well, this has some nice custom stuff on it, so yeah, we'll have to take a picture of this thing before it's done. All right, let's clean this thing up. This costs nothing other than my time to do this. And I wish the shipping from the UK was cheaper, man. All the 3D printed stuff you guys are making out there, a lot of it which looks awesome. Okay, we're good to here. Let's go here. Oh, we're gonna have to put on safety glasses. I don't want to because then I can't see shit. I think I got a pair of them here somewhere. I don't want to wear PPE at home. Jesus. All right, I will though. Let the record show this is the first time I've worn PPE. You know, there's some things here to fill in. I don't think I'm going to fill them in. That should be straight side right there. I feel like I'm giving this thing a dental cleaning. Okay, that's better. Are mothballs things? I remember as a kid, my dad always had mothballs. He put it in the weirdest places. I don't think I've ever seen a moth. Yeah, I just look at stuff. This is a good way to practice airbrushing something that if it doesn't turn out well, I'm happy with it. The problem is everything I've done, I've been happy with it. So that doesn't really work. That one's not repairable. Okay, this thing is like half broken. I'm just gonna take these clippers off. If I really want a pair of clippers, I've got other ones I can replace it with. Oh, this stuff is stinky. It's weird to work on things in my hobby that smell, because this is pretty much an odorless hobby. Okay, that's chipped up a little bit. I don't mind that. It's actually punched through there. I think she's okay with this being scuffed up a little bit. Everything cool. We got this guy in here. The back's just a train wreck. We're just gonna leave it alone. Missing a big old gap here. I'm leaving that alone. Running gears probably. Ugh. Okay. I was even looked on eBay if somebody was selling like a model really cheap. Buy it, but shipping's just stupid these days. Maybe I'll find something at a flea market or some junk tank and have an extra barrel. So I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and paint them both. I'll make sure the barrel stays the same color and I can replace them as I need to until I find another barrel for the other Panther. And that's a win. Everybody wins. I get to build both tanks, get to paint 2 tanks, get to build another Panther. Oh, why'd I do that? 'Cause I'm stupid. This isn't gonna be perfect, but it helps fill in a big old hole in the periscope in the wrong place. Okay. It's going to be rough looking, but I think it'll turn out okay. Be an opportunity to show before and after. Anyhow, okay, well that's it for this session. We're gonna prime this guy black, and do some camouflage on the other 3. Oh, I said I was gonna do something. Let's do it. Let me look at the shirts on my Panzer 3 from Eschi. The turret shirts, I should say. The last one of these I got, it was scaled really close to 1/72 scale, so that's a good thing. This is only the whole one. Oh, here's the turret one. Okay, we got some extra tools and shit to add on here. I actually have shovels and stuff we can add to the side of this Panther. All right, we got some good stuff coming up ahead. I'm gonna build. I know the back of the shirt's in somewhere. I'm trying to put the shirts on the back on this turret. What the hell? I got nothing to lose. Got nothing to lose, everything to gain. We have Panzer 3L with little shirts and around the thing on here. Because it's very common, very prevalent to find those on the cursed vehicles. That's why I keep all this stuff. You never know what we're going to need. Okay, folks, well, that's it. That's where we're going to cut it off for tonight, for today, for this session. There it is. I got tank stuck in multiple places. Where's the back? Where's the back of the turret? Yeah, we'll mess with this. We'll put it together and see how it works. It might be a good fit. It might not work. Okay, folks, until next time,